Hey guys, Chaos Shinobi here. This is what if Naruto had his inheritance and unlocked his full potential from a secret seal. Naruto will be very smart. Now let's begin. Aoi turned back to Naruto, who had drawn his twin ninjados and was beginning to form his two wings behind him. The Sandaime Hokage and Naruto had realized that Naruto did it almost subconsciously in a fight, and on many missions while his clone was at the academy, Naruto had to wear seals in order to stop it from happening, in order to stop other villages identifying him as Konoha's deathly angel. Aoi and Zabuza looked on as Naruto directed small amounts of his chakra to the seals on the blades of his ninjados. All of a sudden the right one seemed to gain a field of lightning around it while the left did the same with wind, as one could see tiny bladed shapes whirling around the blade. When Zabuza saw this his eyes widened. If a person took a full-on hit from that blade it would cut its way through their body, as the small blades of wind would grind away at an opponent's flesh, just at high speed. Meanwhile Aoi dismissed the two elementally covered swords, thinking that they were but a pale imitation of the Raijin no Ken, and as such were incomparable in terms of sheer power. Naruto watched as the two missing nin drew their blades, Zabuza with his Kubikirabocho, and Aoi with the Raijin no Ken. He noted that even though Zabuza was treating him warily, Aoi was completely and utterly relaxed, as he had come to rely on the blade of the Nidaime too much. Although it hadn't failed him yet, his arrogance allowed him to think it would never do so, and that would give Naruto a huge advantage. Knowing that it was time to stop stalling, Naruto disabled his weights and resistance seals and shot forward. Next millisecond, Naruto had both of his attacks blocked by the blades of the two missing nins. He grinned quickly before disappearing in a blur of speed. Zabuza swore Naruto hadn't been that fast before, and he had barely held out against him then, although he had only survived due to Haku's intervention. He swore louder. With Yujito and Sai. Yujito and Sai had decided to team up with each other and take on Zabuza's accomplice, although Sai was intending to put forward Naruto's proposition after he had defeated her. Yujito had just teamed up with him as she knew that the remainder of her team and Ino would be able to handle the missing nin from AIM. I hope that you can cover being a close-quarters fighter, Sai said as he turned to Yujito. Don't worry about that, Yujito replied, still looking at the girl that was facing them. In response Sai said nothing, just took out an art book and started to mold chakra in order to bring his drawings to life. Haku watched as various creatures of what seemed to be ink raced towards her. In response she summoned a huge amount of ice senbon from the river running below them and shredded the creatures with extreme prejudice. Yujito cursed, this may be harder than they thought if she had an ice bloodline. Sai looked unsurprised, but instead more determined, as he could see that Zabuza regarded her as a tool. This may be my chance to do for another person what Naruto did for me all those years ago, Sai thought determinedly. With Ino and the Kumo team. Ino watched as she and the Kumo team spread themselves out in a line facing the three AIM missing nin. Samui and Omoi had chosen their own targets. The oldest, a girl, and a person who looked to be little more than a boy, but if he was a missing nin then it was likely he had a trick up his sleeve. Meanwhile she and Karui had silently agreed to work together to take down the last opponent, a tall male teenager, who looked rather haunted. As she watched Karui streak towards their opponent in order to engage him in Kenjutsu, she sensed that Samui and Omoi were doing the same. Ino smiled slightly before sunshining behind the missing nins. Karui brought up her katana in order to try a downward strike at the silent teen, but at the very last second it seemed that the teen had brought a kunai up and blocked the strike. His seemingly dead green eyes gazed into Karui's golden ones, shocking her. She brought back her katana for another strike, which was again blocked by the teen's kunai. Realizing that just using her katana was getting her nowhere and simply tiring her out, Karui retreated slightly before channeling lightning chakra to her blade. She then moved back in to attack the teen in Kenjutsu once more. However, before she could do so the teen faded from her sight. Genjutsu, Karui thought worriedly. She never really bothered with Genjutsu. However, before she could focus her chakra and disrupt the Genjutsu, she felt the impact of a kunai to her temple, and everything went dark. Over in their fights Omoi and his opponent were at a standstill, as both seemed equal in their Kenjutsu, while Samui had gained a clear advantage over her enemy, having cut through the tendons in her left arm. Meanwhile Ino was considering how to defeat her opponent now that Karui was clearly out of action. Thankfully, having 3 ANBU level or higher teachers meant that she was pretty capable in all areas that she used. With the Jounin senseis. All 3 of the Jounin senseis watched the fights in front of them. Naruto was doing well against the 2A rank missing nin, It was the other two fights that they were worried about. As such, Kakano was left to make sure Naruto wasn't harmed too badly, while Bi watched over Yujido and Sai, while Kurenai watched Ino and the remains of the Kumo team. Kurenai collected the now unconscious Karui off the field as Ino moved in to combat the tall missing Nin, and prepared herself to intervene should Ino prove to be losing. She was more concerned about Ino as Samui seemed to be taking care of herself, and Omoi had his opponent on the defensive. Although she did raise an eyebrow when she saw Ino focus chakra to what looked to be a seal on her wrist and grab the Chikudo that had appeared. With Naruto. Naruto winced as Aoi prepared to try and stop his movement with the Raijin no Ken. You think the idiot would have learned by now. Naruto had spent the last few minutes running circles around the two swordsmen, and eventually Aoi had got annoyed and relied on the Raijin no Ken to try and stop him. It hadn't worked, and Naruto was still winning. Both Zabuza and Aoi bore various scuff marks and cuts, while Naruto had none. Seeing a chance to finally end Aoi as he turned the wrong way, Naruto ran up behind him, little more than a blur, and kicked Aoi's knees from behind. And as Aoi fell backwards slightly, Naruto used one of his ninjato and separated the traitor's head from his body. Zabuza watched on as Naruto gathered the Nidaime Hokage's blade and Aoi's head and sealed them away within a sealing scroll, before readying himself as Naruto turned to him. Naruto looked at Zabuza evenly. Zabuza, I would like to make you a proposition, Naruto said. Why on earth would you make me a proposition, when we both know you can easily kill me and take my blade? Zabuza asked, grudgingly admitting that Naruto was superior. I am not interested in Kubikurabocho. Instead, my offer is to recruit both you and your accomplice, Haku, into Konoha, as Haku is not the last of his clan and has family there, Naruto said, slightly angry by the fact that Zabuza considered his sword over his accomplice. Why would your Kage want either of us? It would bring nothing more than trouble for Konoha, and Haku would be treated as little more than a breeding machine for your power-hungry civilians. In fact, how the hell do you even know of Haku, as you have never met him apart from that small encounter where he acted as the hunter Nin? Zabuza refuted. One of our number is a Yamanaka who retrieved the information from the demon brothers before they died, Naruto said shortly, liking this man less and less. But you would rid me of my weapon if he accompanied you to Konoha, Zabuza said, finally stating that he saw Haku as nothing more than a weapon. Naruto didn't respond, blurring behind Zabuza. If you won't allow me to take him, then I shall ask him myself, Naruto said harshly into the missing Nin's ear. You will have to kill me before I allow you near him, Zabuza said, turning, with his blade sweeping around. And you can't stop me from doing so, Naruto said, ninjatos at the ready. Ah, but you aren't the only one wearing chakra weights, Zabuza said, and with a burst of chakra, released them. Naruto and Zabuza re-engaged with blurs of speed, causing sparks to fly from their colliding blades. With Sai and Yujito cursed. If there is one thing I can say about this girl, she thought, frustrated, it's that her use of ice makes it really hard to deal with her. I mean, waves of ice senbons and now this mirror dome jutsu, along with the fact that she can do one-handed seals, and she is a pretty nasty surprise. Sai was in a slightly better condition, being outside of the dome, and was considering when he was going to put forward Naruto's proposition, as the fake hunter Nin was more difficult to defeat than he had anticipated. His thoughts were put on hold as he felt Yujito accessing her Biju's chakra. Well, this will make defeating the accomplice easier, but I will need to use one of Naruto's seals to stop Yujito from killing the girl, Sai thought, reaching into a vest pocket for a sealing tag. Sai watched as Yujito began to smash the ice mirrors forming the dome, eventually reaching the last one and shattering it, causing Haku to fall out of it with a cry of pain. As Yujito stepped forward to punch Haku into oblivion, Sai blurred behind the Bijufied Kunoichi and put Naruto's sealing tag on the back of her neck, causing Yujito to go unconscious and forcing the Biju's chakra into its seal. Haku looked up at Sai before saying, You know, there is nothing I hate more than traitors. I am not betraying her, but I need to put forward a proposition for my teammate, and she was about to crush you, Sai said calmly, laying Yujito out in a more comfortable position. Such would be my punishment for failing Zabuza-sama, and all propositions that you have for me should go to him, as he is my master, Haku said, pulling off her hunter Nin mask and revealing to Sai that he was in fact a boy. It does not necessarily concern Zabuza, as he may be dead by now, Sai said. If anyone tries to harm Zabuza-sama, then they will die, Haku said, determination clear in his voice. Do you really want to live your life as a tool to a man who doesn't really care if you live or die, unless it stops you from completing his goal? Sai asked, seeing if he could get Haku to question his loyalty. Yes, Haku replied briefly. Why? He saved my life. So? With Ino, Samui, and Omoi. Samui had killed her opponent and had moved off to help Omoi with his, as he had been having a little trouble once his opponent had revealed that he could leech chakra through mere touch. Meanwhile, Ino was sneaking up on her opponent as her Kage Bunshin, which had been taught to her by Naruto, distracted him by attacking with a Chikudo. As her Kage Bunshin thrust at her opponent, he moved closer to Ino's hiding place by coincidence as he tried to back off. Seizing the opportunity, Ino bolted out of her hiding place and knocked him out with the handle of her kunai. Ordinarily, she would have killed him, no matter how much it disgusted her. But he had made no move to attack her. It was almost as if he was asking for repentance and a second chance. Thinking this line of thought, she used her Shintenshin no Jutsu to walk his mind and see if he truly wanted to repent. Samui and Omoi, finishing off their opponent a few minutes later after Omoi acted like he was out of chakra, saw Ino's slumped body and settled down to wait before she came back out. Not cool, said Samui. With Sai and Haku. Does he mean to say that if I went to Konoha, I could have a family? I could have a different purpose? Haku's mind was racing. To tell the truth, he hated the fact that he served Zabuza so well, but it was pretty much all he knew, so he stayed, afraid of being on her own. Now it seemed that Konoha was offering him a chance to leave. She would never be alone again. Thanks, he said briefly, turning to Sai and smiling. It was nothing, after all Naruto did the same for me, he said, smiling before looking towards Naruto's fight. Do you think I could be on the same team as you and Naruto? It was obvious Haku didn't really want him to leave, so Sai stayed. Yeah, after all he calls the Hokage Gigi, so it shouldn't really be a problem, Sai said. He does what? Haku asked, scandalized. Sai just laughed. Now with all fights apart from Naruto's finished, everyone gathered to watch Naruto's fight with Zabuza. After all, it wasn't every day that one saw two Kenjutsu masters fight with pure Kenjutsu. Some of the genin were about to raise questions seeing the unconscious missing nin from Aim, Haku, and especially the unconscious Yujido, but Kanako told them to deal with it after Naruto's fight with Zabuza was finished unless they needed medical attention. As they watched Naruto and Zabuza fight, they discussed it amongst themselves. Man, I ain't sure that I could beat that brat, B rapped as he watched the two fight. At the statement, the Kumo genin, including the recently awoken Yujito, looked slightly alarmed. B was one of the best shinobi in Kumo, if not the best. Well, he is able to beat the Sandaime Hokage in pure ninjutsu, Kanako said proudly, remembering the spar that the two held once a month. At this, the jaws of all the genin, Haku, and B dropped. The Sandaime Hokage specialized in ninjutsu and bujitsu. To be able to beat him only using ninjutsu was incredible. It's more like dancing, isn't it? Haku commented as they watched Naruto flow through and around Zabuza's attacks before inflicting his own. All the spectators had to agree, as Naruto's movements, at least what they could see of them, were very graceful, full of twirls and spins. Eventually it got to the stage where Naruto had one of his ninjato pointed at Zabuza's throat and the other at his heart, Kubikirabocho lying several meters off to one side after Naruto cut off one of Zabuza's hands. Do you surrender? Naruto said, his eyes and voice giving everyone the chills. Before Zabuza could spit in his face, everyone heard clapping from the far end of the bridge. Everyone looked past the two Kenjutsu masters and saw Gato with a few hundred bandits and cutthroats behind him. Gato, what is this? Zabuza roared in anger at having been betrayed by his now former employer. This was always my plan. You missing nin cost too much. I got all of these men for the very same price, and it seems that you couldn't even do the job. Pathetic, the demon of the hidden mist, more like a weak-willed kitten. Gato sneered at the former member of the Seven Swordsmen. Zabuza turned back to Naruto, who had lowered his swords slightly. It seems that we are no longer enemies, he said briefly before walking to one side and picking up Kubikirabocho. He looked at Naruto, who had unsealed an okatana from a storage seal after sheathing his ninjatos. Together, he asked him, receiving a nod in return, and with that the two of them plunged into the mass of men facing them. The remainder of the shinobi watched as the two of them working their way quickly through the men, shredding whatever formation they had previously been in. Naruto used his pure speed to cut his way forward, jumping over the head of men and twirling this way and that, while Zabuza used pure strength, cutting down all who opposed him in wide sweeping blows, but received a lot of damage in return. Zabuza eventually collapsed as Naruto cut down the last few men before turning to Gato, who he handed over to the recently arrived crowd of wave villagers. He then returned as Haku knelt down to his former master in order to hear his last words. Haku, I am sorry for the way I treated you, but it's too late now. Take Kubikirabocho with you. There are Kenjutsu scrolls on it back in the hideout. Go with Konoha, they will look after you due to your bloodline. Apparently there are members of your family there as well, Zabuza said, gasping in between words. Thank you for all you gave me, Zabuza. I will make sure that you are not forgotten, Haku said, closing his eyes for a time in sadness. He then retrieved Kubikirabocho from nearby and sealed it within a scroll, before taking Zabuza off the bridge and over to the mainland of the elemental nations. 2 weeks later. After that, there was a huge celebration held by the villagers of Wave, which increased after Naruto and Sai brought back all the money Gato had stolen from them while accompanying Haku. Zabuza and Naruto were honored as the heroes of Wave, which got Naruto a lot of attention which he didn't particularly want. And the word of Konoha's deathly angel's true identity was spread across the elemental nations. In order to escape from all the attention, pretty much all of the shinobi hid in the nearby forests training. None of them seemed to like the fame very much. The missing nin from Amige Cure that Ino had knocked out was called Kurino, and he had begged for a second chance to Kanako and asked if it was possible he could taken in by Konoha. He was very skilled in Genjutsu and had formed a natural friendship with both Ino and Kurenai, although Kiba remained slightly suspicious of him. Haku meanwhile became friends with both of the Konoha teams and most of the Kumo team, as Karui treated suspiciously. But she was best friends with Team 7 and Kurino, who had hated his time as an AIM shinobi and as a missing nin, and now that he had become friends with others, started smiling a lot more. Eventually it was time for the 3 teams, Haku and Kurino, to leave Wave and go their separate ways. The Kumo team was to go back to Kumo until the Chunin exams, and B was grumbling incessantly about not being able to leave the city for almost 2 months. The Konoha ninja, now that their final missions needed to register in the Chunin exams were complete, would be staying and training in Konoha for them. All of the genin promised to face each other in the exams, eager to see how much their friends had grown. However, the most surprising thing was when Tazuna and Tsunami asked to talk with Kakano, Naruto, and Kurenai. Okay, so what's this about? Kakano asked as the 3 shinobi stood in the empty dining room with the 2 adults. Well, seeing the actions of the group of shinobi that helped has made many parents wonder if their children could grow to do the same. Tsunami started uncertainly. You don't mean to say that, Dash? Kurenai started, eyes wide. Yes, many children, after seeing and hearing of the battle on the bridge, wish to become shinobi. Now even if you don't accept to take them, we shall still give a majority of our trade to Konoha. But even Inari wants to become a shinobi. So I think that if you do accept to take them, we will allow you to recruit shinobi from Wave, Tazuna stated. We will need to discuss this before we make our decision, Naruto said, interested by the idea. At this, the 2 adults nodded and filed out of the room. Once they were gone, the 3 shinobi began to discuss the possibility of Inari and a few other children going to Konoha with them. It would be a bonus to Konoha, as we would gain a crop of new shinobi, and even if we decline, they will still trade with us, Kanako said. And I think Hokage-sama will like the idea, although we will have to come up with a different training system for them, as many are likely going to be too old to attend the academy, Kurenai put in. So we are in agreement, we will accept, and on the way back to Konoha we shall think of a training program to put them through to make up for the academy, Naruto concluded, interested at training from a teacher's perspective. Although it does depend on how many are wanting to go to Konoha, Kanako added, resting her head in her hands. Tazuna, Naruto called out through the door. Yes. Just how many children are interested? Naruto asked, smiling. I think around 12 pairs of parents are thinking of the idea, so that would be around 15 kids, as several of them have 2 kids, Tazuna said, rapidly estimating in his head. Perfect. Well, we have agreed to take those 15 back to Konoha with us, although they better be prepared to leave soon, as we are leaving in 2 days, so can you go round and notify the parents of this decision? Naruto asked kindly. Tazuna nodded an affirmative before hurrying out of the house to try and find the children's parents. As such, the 2 Konoha teams found themselves leaving Wave 2 days later, accompanied by 15 children, many of whom had immediately started addressing the Konoha genin as their older brothers or sisters. The Kumo team had left the day before, So everyone was slightly late to the meeting point as Wave had decided to have a massive celebration last night, and everyone was really tired. All the parents were anxiously saying goodbye to their children, all of whom were really excited at the thought of becoming Shinobi, and Kanako was carrying a document for the Hokage containing a trade agreement between Wave and Konoha. 2 days later, all the genin had become rather annoyed by the loud shouts and talking of the children, to the point that night, Naruto got fed up and started training their fitness, consequently exhausting the children. Due to them being tired, it would take an extra half-day to reach the Konoha gates, and Kanako beat Naruto over the head when she realized this fact. Around 1 o'clock in the afternoon on the next day, they finally arrived at Konoha's massive gates, and all of the children were subdued by awe. Everything's so big, Inari thought as he looked at the buildings inside Konoha's gates as Kanako and Kurenai signed them in. So what's with all the kids? Izumo asked as he looked at the children. Apparently all of them want to become Shinobi, Kanako sighed tiredly, before motioning for everyone to follow her inside. Kurenai dismissed Team 8, telling them they had a few days off before they would be expected for training once more. As such, it was a group of 22 that trooped off to the Hokage's tower, Team 7 looking out for the children concernedly, making sure none strayed off. Hokage's office. Hiruzen sighed in consternation. Team 7 and 8 were a day late from their mission, and although with the Jounin senseis present along with Naruto and Sai could look after themselves and keep their team safe, he couldn't help but worry. He was broken from his thoughts when seals that Naruto had put into his desk indicated him that there were people approaching his office. "Hey Gigi," Naruto said, opening the door and letting in what seemed to be a mass of people. Hiruzen stared quietly at the children and the 2 unknown missing nins before sighing quietly. "Naruto, perhaps you would be so kind as to tell me why these people are here?" His tone indicated that he was going to have to talk with Naruto afterwards. Naruto gulped. "Well, these 2 are missing nin that wish to join Konoha," Naruto said, indicating Kurino and Haku. "And why would they want to do that?" Hiruzen asked, interrupting Naruto. "Well, Haku is a member of the Yuki clan, and has family in Konoha. He was also never an actual shinobi, so the hunter nin aren't after him. Meanwhile, Kurino was a missing nin from Amigakure that escaped while Hanzo was fighting the civil war, which has apparently ended," Kanako said, seeing that Hiruzen was making Naruto flounder. "And what can they contribute?" Hiruzen said in a clipped tone. He should have known Naruto would manage to be embroiled in something like this. "Hokage-sama, I have several scrolls on Kenjutsu and water jutsu from my former master Momochi Zabuza," Haku said, stepping forward slightly. "And I have a good knowledge of genjutsu and assassination techniques used by AIM shinobi," Kurino said in a quiet tone. Hiruzen had to admit, those were both very useful things. "All right, you 2 can join, and as neither of you are evaluated on your rank, you'll be attaches to Team 7 as they are who you are most comfortable with," Hiruzen sighed. The 2 stepped back. "Now, I hope one of you has an answer as to why there are around 15 children in my office?" Hiruzen glared at Naruto before Kanako coughed quietly. "Actually, Hokage-sama, there is something here for you to read," she said as she pulled out the missive from Tazuna. Hiruzen looked over it before saying, "Well, we shall send a chunin saying that we agree, but have any of you come up with any ideas of how we shall train them?" Hiruzen said in a slightly kinder tone as he regarded the children. "Actually, Gigi, I have a suggestion. Perhaps we could do the same that we did with me and Sai, just on a lower level. Perhaps you could let some of the genin join in as a learning experience before they become Jounin senseis," Naruto put in from one side. "Actually, that isn't a bad idea, but first we shall need to find a place for them to live," Hiruzen said. "They could live in my apartment building along with Kurino, as not many live there due to my status, and it is well protected due to my seals," said Naruto, as he got along well with the apartment owner and had put seals all over the place to prevent it from being damaged or burnt down. "So we are in agreement. They shall live in Kosuke's apartment building for the time being, depending on whether they want to move out," Hiruzen said, nodding. "Now all apart from Sai, Kanako and Naruto are dismissed. Ino and Kurenai, could you take Haku to her compound and introduce her to her family, and also take Kurino and the children to Kosuke's? Just tell him that I sent you, he'll understand," Hiruzen said before turning his attention to the 3 in front of him. "Kanako, can you hand over your report on the mission?" Hiruzen, which he summarily put on top of the huge stack of papers that his Kagebunshin were working on. "All right, as we all know, the Chunin exams are being held within Konoha in around a month and a half's time. This will be a prime opportunity for agents to infiltrate Konoha, so we need to prepare for extra security and perhaps even an invasion. This is primarily a task for you three, as your Fuinjutsu and Inkjutsu will allow us to keep track of security and warn us if an invasion is likely. So I need you three to come up with a way to monitor the village. Also, I need you Kanako and Naruto to go over the seals on Konoha's walls and, if possible, upgrade them. Sai, while they are doing that, you will be monitoring the incoming competitors to check if something is off. Is this understood? Hiruzen briefed them. Hi, Hokage-sama, the three replied. Oh, Gigi, it might be time to reveal the identity of Konoha's deathly angel, Naruto suggested. Hiruzen looked at him, curious as to his reasoning, before Naruto motioned to Kanako's report. Dismissed, Hiruzen said vaguely as he began reading of their most recent mission. Naruto and Sai sighed tiredly as they waited for Ino to meet them at the bridge. Over the past 4 weeks, they had been working to the bone preparing for the Chunin exams while also completing their mission for the Hokage. There was now only 2 weeks until the exams, and they had finally figured out the solution to their mission after Naruto had invented something called a relay seal. These seals were connected to seals all around Konoha, transmitting information on people, location, time, and key to pick up mentions of invasions and the like. All this information would then transmit itself to the Hokage every half hour. This was compounded by Sai using the same seal on his ink creatures, allowing them to mobile information gatherers on the competing teams. Another reason for their tiredness was the children they had picked up in Wave. They literally drove Naruto insane, demanding for training at all hours, and eventually they had to create Kage Bunshins to start their training. And between all of this, they had been helping Ino continue to get ready for the exams. Not that she really needed it, but she wanted to impress. Hey guys, sorry I'm late, Ino called as she rushed over, having run to the meeting point to help keep up her fitness. Ino had changed a lot from the fangirl that she had been in the academy. She now wore black pants and red shirt, although this was framed by a black ankle-length trench coat with a red angel on the back. Her chikudo was at her hip, confident that she could use it efficiently, having been taught in Kenjutsu by Naruto. She had her headband hanging loosely around her neck. It's all right, after all Nei-chan hasn't arrived yet, so you aren't really late, Sai said smiling. Ordinarily Haku and Kurino would be there with the three of them, but as Kanako said, it was just the three of them that needed to be here. They were watching over the children from Wave who had a habit of getting in trouble. Typically because Konohamaru managed to involve them in his pranks. Naruto had introduced Konohamaru to Haku, Kurino and Ino about half a week after they had returned, and it was rather explosive when he thought that Haku was a girl. Hey guys, Kanako said after sunshining to the end of the bridge. Hey Nei-chan. All three of them replied as Ino had begun to see her friends as her second family. All right, we aren't doing training today, as you have the day off to think about and sign these, Kanako said, handing out 3 forms for the Chunin exams. All three took one glance at them before saying something, not looking up. Anyone have a brush? Kanako sighed. I should have known it was worthless asking these three. They were going to say yes all along. 15 minutes later, the three walked out of the Hokage's office, having just handed in their forms for the Chunin exams. They weren't surprised to encounter Team 8 on the way out, as they knew that they would be attending. As such, they waited for Team 8 before they all decided that they would go see how Team 10 was doing, and from there they would split. Team 7 were going to go bug Team 9, having spent a few training sessions together, while Team 8 was going to go spend time with the children from Wave. As such, they all dawdled their way to Training Ground 10 in order to meet Team 10 and see how they were doing. Naruto grumbled when they initially set out, not wanting to have to put up with Asuma, who always disliked him due to his casual friendliness with most of the kunoichi around town, but came along anyway. As the 6 genin walked through the Training Ground 10 boundaries, they became aware of high-pitched shrieking ahead of them. Everyone winced in pity for Choji and Shikamaru. They must have suffered broken eardrums being in the presence of that. After the shrieking stopped, Kiba said something that everyone agreed with. Poor bastards. Naruto quickly created several sets of earplugs using his Uzumaki bloodline before handing them out to everyone, and everyone proceeded to stuff them in their ears in order to preserve their eardrums. Now thoroughly prepared, everyone walked towards the sound, eventually coming to the sight of Shikamaru and Choji Cloud, watching while Sakura daydreamed from a nearby tree. Naruto mentally thanked Kami that Asuma seemed to be absent. Hey guys, Kiba called, taking the earplugs out of his ears and waving to the team. Oh hey, Shikamaru said lazily after lifting his head to see who it was. So, you guys ready for the Chunin exams? Kiba asked. Well, I am thinking of entering, Choji said while munching on a bag of chips. Naruto Baka, where is Sasuke-kun? Sakura screeched while examining the two teams, thinking that Sasuke might be hidden away somewhere. He's been in hospital for the past 5 months. Naruto was actually quite surprised that she didn't know. What? What did you do to him, Naruto Baka? Sakura screeched, if it was possible, even louder. First day of training after our genin exams, he called my mother a whore, so I punched through 3 trees. Apparently he had around 78 broken bones, and will remain in the hospital for around another year, Naruto said in a conversational tone, shocking Team 10. What? Sakura screeched in disbelief before hurrying off to the hospital. And as Naruto walked off to one side, Shikamaru turned to Ino. 3 trees? He asked incredulously. Yep, 1 punch, she said almost proudly. Well, I see that someone's not a fangirl any longer, Shikamaru commented, taking in her appearance. The genin exams at the academy gave me a wake-up call, Ino said shortly before she began to talk to the two of other things. After their conversation with Team 10, in which Naruto learned that Asuma was actually a very lazy sensei, the two teams split up, with Team 7 making the short journey to Training Ground 9. Ino knew what to expect as she had met Guy during her initial training before Wave, but she still hated the Eternal Sunset Genjutsu that Lee and Guy managed to produce, like so many others. And even though Naruto and Sai had spent their time ever since Guy had gained the team last year trying to break Hyuga Niji out of his icy attitude, neither had managed to, as Niji would not divulge the cause of it. However, all 3 had agreed that at the moment Tenten was the most likable of the 3 making up Team 9. Although all admired the training and dedication shown by Lee, he did drive them crazy with his talk of flames of youth. Hey guys, and Tenten and Niji, Naruto called, wondering how Niji would react when he greeted by his name, when before he just counted him in with the guys. And what is your exclusion of me from guys meant to indicate, Naruto-san? Niji said in his uptight manner. Just that you're no longer included in that category by my standards. At least Niji treated him and Sai courteously, as both had beaten him whenever they sparred, but he didn't extend the same to Ino. Niji didn't react to the direct insult and turned back to watching Lee and Guy do their insane physical exercises. Ino spent her time talking with Tenten as the two watched Niji and Naruto spar along with Lee and Guy. Both Niji and Naruto, along with occasionally Sai, had to put up with Lee constantly challenging them, as they were his eternal rivals. All 3 of them had silently agreed that they would take turns dealing with Lee's challenges to make them less of a bother. And although all 3 internally found Lee's determination impressive, it annoyed the hell out of them, especially when they were having a bad day. And Naruto drew the majority of the challenges, being a former student of Guy himself, eventually surpassing him due to his sheer speed. As Naruto and Niji sparred, all knew that it was Naruto who was going to win, as Niji's styles were purely Hyuga techniques, and all taijutsu-based, meaning that Naruto could just throw jutsu after jutsu at Niji until he got exhausted. However, Naruto liked to test Niji, and faced him in taijutsu, decreasing his chakra weights whenever Niji scored a hit on one of his tenkatsu. Eventually it got to the point where he got so fast that even Guy could barely even see him, and Niji gave the victory over to Naruto after getting punched through a tree. Yash, Naruto-san's flames burn as brightly as ever, Lee exclaimed loudly. I think it is time that we go, and Ai-san, Naruto said to Guy, knowing that if he didn't, Lee would challenge him to a fight. The 3 from Team 7 quickly made their way out of the training ground. Well, I shall see you guys tomorrow, Naruto said as he turned to go over to Gigi's office, while Sai and Ino went over to Training Ground 4, where Team 8 along with Haku and Kurino were currently training the children that had come with them from Wave. Ino turned to Sai. How about a race to see who can get to the training ground first? Ino wasn't afraid to ask Sai to a race as her training had increased her speed to low jounin levels when she took off her chakra weights. Well, if you aren't afraid to lose, Sai grinned before both of them released what chakra weights they had and took off, leaving massive dust clouds behind them. With Team 8, Haku and Kurino. Team 8 and Kurino had unanimously decided that Haku was the best out of the 5 of them to instruct the 15 children in the basics of being shinobi. As such, the 4 of them were watching Haku tell the children to do push-ups and sit-ups in order to increase their stamina and strength. Well, we are in agreement that Haku is a sadistic bastard when it comes to training, Kiba stated as they had noticed that Haku seemed to take pleasure in watching others suffer through the joys of training. However, everyone's attention was grabbed when they saw a massive dust cloud billowing towards the gate. Hinata activated her Byakugan to see Ino and Sai racing their way towards the gate, with Sai narrowly winning. What the hell was that? Kiba asked as everyone gazed in the direction of the training ground gate. That was just Ino and Sai having a little race, Hinata said. This immediately caught the attention of all the children who raced off to greet their Nei-chan and Inai-chan, Inari sprinting out in front. Well, at least I won't be the only one teaching them anymore, you lazy bastards, Haku sighed. Haku himself had undergone a massive change in character ever since he came to Konoha. His appearance was pretty much the same, as apparently he had fun cross-dressing and screwing with people's heads. But around his friends his character was much more relaxed. Kurino was the same, minus the cross-dressing, but was still very wary of people he didn't know, although he seemed to relax around the children. Okay, now that the two of us are here, you will split up into 3 groups of 5. They heard Sai telling the children calmly after he and Ino greeted them. The children did so relatively quickly, with there being only a few arguments about friends and so on. All right, the 3 groups will work on a rotational basis. One group will work on ninjutsu basics, while another works on genjutsu basics and the last on taijutsu basics. You will have half an hour with each before you swap to the next discipline. You will be Group 1, you lot Group 2, and you guys Group 3, Sai said, quickly explaining their training outline. The genin quickly split themselves into different groups with Kiba, Sai and Hinata doing taijutsu, Kurino and Shino doing genjutsu, and leaving Ino and Haku to do ninjutsu. Both the ninjutsu and the genjutsu group were merely working on activating the children's chakra networks. Before the ninjutsu group would begin work on the basic academy jutsu and the genjutsu group would begin with basic chakra control. The taijutsu group would be working their way through the basic academy style before doing a small sparring contest to see how well they picked it up. Meanwhile, with Naruto. Naruto had just been allowed into the Hokage's office after the secretary had run out of reasons to keep him out. So how are you liking it, Gigi? Naruto asked smugly as he saw the Hokage looking at what looked to be a spare table in a far corner of the room, while his Kage Bunshin were working their way through the piles of papers on his desk. This is amazing, Naruto. It's like have sensor ninja all over the city constantly transmitting. One could clearly hear the glee in Hiruzen's voice. What the Hokage was actually looking at was Naruto pride and joy as a sealing master. It was the receiver for all the information that his sensor seals gathered and transmitted. It was a 3D model encompassing all of Konoha, showing the location of every single person in the city, and if they were a ninja, the seals could even catch samples of their unique chakra patterns, allowing someone to track a person through the city and hear all they say, etc. All the Hokage had to do was touch his finger to a chakra signature, send a burst of chakra, and the receiver would come up with a list of recent information. In essence, it was the ultimate security measure in terms of dealing with spies and capturing criminals. Along with the fact that every ANBU captain had received upgraded headpieces to use in the case of an invasion, as they were linked to a microphone on the receiver. Also, Gigi, Nei-chan and I went over the seals on Konoha's walls, and we upgraded several, meaning they could stand over 100 of Tsunade's punches combined at any one time. We even managed to rekey the seals for Konoha's alarm field to be able to change it into a solid barrier of chakra that will be able to stop a tailed beast bomb from the Nibi no Nikomata. Naruto said proudly, as he had invented a bunch of completely new seals for it to work. Really? Hiruzen asked curiously, in the case of an invasion that would help greatly. Yep. Well, remind Kanako and Sai to come see me with you when you want to receive your payment, Hiruzen said, smiling, before turning back to the receiver as Naruto left. As Naruto was walking through Konoha to Ichiraka's ramen, he heard the sound of a commotion and a rather familiar voice. Put me down. Shut the hell up, brat. That fucking hurt. So I am going to teach you a lesson. Naruto immediately recognized both voices. The younger one was that of Konohamaru, the Sandame's grandson, while the older one was that of Sabaku no Kankuro, middle child of the Yandame Kazekage and specializing in the use of puppets. Naruto raced round the corner to see Konohamaru being held at shoulder height of the ground by Kankuro, who was accompanied by a blonde girl with her hair in 4 buns. Obviously his older sister Sabaku no Temari. Naruto briefly wondered where their younger sister was before dismissing the thoughts as he saw Kankuro draw back his fist in order to punch Konohamaru. Kankuro was about to pummel this brat. He ran into him and has the nerve to demand that he be let go. Put me down, the brat he was holding off the ground shouted at him. That's it. He's pissed me off. Shut the hell up, brat. That fucking hurt. So I am going to teach you a lesson, Kankuro shouted at the boy, before pulling his fist back to punch him. His fist launched, he was certain of that, but it never reached Konohamaru, as Naruto had intercepted the punch calmly, as if it was little more than a feather. Temari gasped when she saw the rather handsome boy intercept Kankuro's punch like it was nothing. She hadn't even seen him move. One moment he wasn't there, the next he was. Naruto calmly stopped Kankuro's fist before grabbing his wrist and forcing him to drop Konohamaru, who he then caught before he landed on the ground. "Go over to your friend's Kono," Naruto said in a voice of quiet anger as he nudged the young boy back. "Yes, Senai-san," Konohamaru said confidently now that Naruto was here, who subsequently turned back to face the two Tsunagenin. "You fool. You could have started a war. Did you even know that that was the Sandaime Hokage's grandson you just tried to hit?" Kankuro paled slightly at the knowledge, but backed off slightly before beginning to pull the huge package off his back. "Kankuro, you're going to bring Crow out here?" Temari asked furiously. "This asshole deserves it for insulting me," Kankuro said angrily. "I really wouldn't try doing that," Naruto warned, creating his wings with his chakra. As soon as Temari saw the wings, she gasped. "Kankuro, stop. That's Konoha's deathly angel. The youngest bingo booker in history and the youngest S-ranked nin," Temari said hurriedly, stopping Kankuro in his actions. "After all, an S-ranked shinobi is not a fight very many chose. Well, not to mention my teammates behind you with a tanto and a chikudo to each of your necks," Naruto said in an amused tone, before turning and telling whoever was in the tree to come out and stop hiding. At this, both of the Tsunagenin looked at each other anxiously. Gaia had never taken to following orders kindly unless she liked the orders. That and the possibility that she had seen the incident involving Kankuro and Konohamaru. Gaia looked down upon the scene from the branches that she was hanging from, having returned from checking in with the Konoha registration office to confirm that they had actually arrived, even if it was 2 weeks early for the exams. She had seen the entire incident between Kankuro and the brat. Honestly, Kankuro such a winner, the brat barely bumped him, she thought, her lips twitching up in a smile, before recomposing her face into the angry glare that she usually had it in. "Ooh, someone powerful has arrived, Gaia. You will have to feed me his blood?" Shikaku muttered crazily in the back of her mind. In return for Gaia being such a good source of blood and death, Shikaku had begun to call her by her real name recently. Hearing Naruto call for her to come out, Gaia used a sand shunshin and appeared in front of her 2 older siblings. "And you are?" Naruto asked, knowing full well who this was. Gaia's one visible pale green glared at him from behind chin-length spiky dark red hair that flared across her face, obscuring the majority of her face. "Sabaku no Gaia," she introduced briefly before turning and repatriating Kankuro. "So this is Tsuna's Jinchuriki," Naruto thought upon seeing her. It was obvious that she had been turned into a weapon by her village. But perhaps it had failed, as Naruto thought he saw a flicker of humanity in her eye as she turned back to face him. "And you are?" Gaia asked of Team 7. Ino and Sai having shunshined behind Naruto and sheathed their blades. "Team 7 of Konohagakure. This is Sai Yamanaka Ino and my name is Uzumaki Naruto," Naruto said, introducing his team. "It will be interesting to face your team in the Chunin exams, Uzumaki," Gaia said with a glint of hunger in her visible eye. "Oh man, Suna really did a number on her," Naruto thought exasperatedly in disgust. Naruto and his team watched silently as the 3 Sand siblings began to walk back the way they had come. "Oh, Gaia, if you want me to fix your seal, you need only ask," Naruto called. He saw Gaia pause and glare at him over her shoulder before she continued walking. After the encounter with the Sand siblings, Naruto accompanied Konohamaru for a small game of ninja, before going off and doing some private training until he decided to turn in for the night. His fight with Zabuza had shown him that it was always a good idea to have a few things to pull you out of tight spots, whether it was a reliable defense jutsu or advantages on skills that you kept hidden. The day of the beginning of the Chunin exams. Team 7 had all agreed that they would meet at the bridge outside of Training Ground 7 as they usually did before walking to the first area of the Chunin exams, which, funnily enough, was the Ninja Academy. They had all been told to go to room 305, which made both Naruto and Ino groan at bad jokes, that room having been the room that they used for taijutsu basics while attending the academy. Sai never got the joke, having never attended the academy in the first place, although officially one needed to attend in order to be a Konoha shinobi. As they walked through Konoha streets, they discussed their meeting with their friends from Kumo, who had arrived a week ago, and Sai's information on the various participants from the other shinobi villages. Flashback no jutsu. Naruto. Naruto turned as he heard the shouting of rather familiar voices, to CB, Yujito, Samui and Omoi coming towards him from down the street. Did you guys say something? Naruto said casually as he pulled a book out and began to read it. All four of the Kumo shinobi face-faulted. Yo, Naruto, ain't you happy to see us? B rapped badly while he recovered from his face fault. What? Oh, it's you guys. When did you get here? Naruto said, acting innocent. And so the five of them talked about things that they had been doing, including sadistic senseis. Hokage-sama made me organize security for the city. Let's just say, I'm not known as the foremost Fuinjutsu expert in the elemental nations for nothing. You guys won't be able to move a muscle without us knowing, Naruto said smugly. Now that sounds intriguing. Can you tell us more, Naruto-kun? Yujito asked, knowing what the answer would be, but still wanted to tease him. Where is Karui? Naruto asked, changing the subject, and for good reason as Karui wasn't with them. Omoi sighed. Karui didn't want to attend the exams. After sparring against your team, she felt as if she needed to do more work and try and go for Chunin next year. Omoi explained, around the sucker he had just put in his mouth. Naruto just nodded in acceptance before the five of them moved off to find the rest of Teams 7 and 8. Flashback no jutsu end. Naruto sighed. Karui should have attended. It wasn't her skills keeping her back, just her hot-headed nature. And he was sure that Kiba was going to be disappointed about not being able to spar her, having been beaten by her in Wave. Team 7 quickly arrived at the academy with over half an hour of time left to spare before they needed to be here. The three of them walked straight past the Genjutsu the two Chunin Suzumo and Kotetsu put up on the door label of room 205, and were the first team to be waiting in 305. Unfortunately, they had been the interest of Team 9 when they arrived, and Lee, seeing them walk up another floor, finally realized it was a Genjutsu and shouted it rather loudly before rushing up after them. So they were only really about 15 minutes ahead of everyone else, with everyone breaking into their teams or hanging out with their friends. Naruto just stayed with his team and Teams 8 and 10, although he did pay a brief visit to the Kumo team. At the moment, however, he was beginning to get annoyed. Sakura. You stupid Naruto baka. How could you put the great Sasuke-kun in hospital? She wailed right in his ear. At this, many of the gathered shinobi looked round at Naruto, wondering what he had to do with the last Uchiha not being present. Quiet down, don't you people understand that people are very tense at the moment? An older Konoha genin said, coming over to the group of rookies. You know, considering that you guys are rookies, I'll lend you guys a hand. I have information on every competitor here. There's even a rumor going around that Konoha's deathly angel is in these exams. If you can guess who it is, then I shall tell you everything I can on him, the genin said, pausing all talk in the hall at the information. And you are? Sai asked, stepping forward slightly even though he already knew. I haven't introduced myself, have I? I am Yakushi Kabuto and 7th time veteran of the Chunin exams, Kabuto said, causing a snigger from Kiba. The two of them got into a brief argument, which was interrupted when Sai asked about the information Kabuto had mentioned earlier. So who is it you want to get info on? Kabuto asked, pulling out his info cards. Samui and Yujito of Kumo, along with Sabaku no Gaia, Sai requested. You know their names, that doesn't make it any fun, Kabuto said with a bit of sarcasm in his voice. Let's see, Sabaku no Gaia, no D ranks to speak of, but has completed 15 C ranks and 2 B ranks. Impressive. Her control over the sub-element of sand is legendary from reports of those who witnessed her fight and escaped. It is also important to note that she has never suffered from any sort of injury in her entire life. Not even a scratch, Kabuto read, shocking everyone but the Sand siblings and Team 7, whose own info said much the same thing. As for Yujito and Samui of Kumo, the two are on the same genin team and were trained by the Raikage's brother. Yujito has a great control of her fire affinity, almost to the point where her mastery is unprecedented, accepting fire affinity experts such as Uchiha Madara. Samui has an affinity for both lightning and water elements, and both are reasonably good in Kenjutsu along with their teammate. Kabuto read of his card, annoyed he didn't have their mission record. Well, I have a person I would like for you to give me information on. All turned, rather surprised, to see Gaia, who proceeded to point wordlessly at Naruto, who rolled his eyes casually before motioning for Kabuto to go ahead. They wouldn't be able to do anything about it anyway. Everyone could see the grin on Kabuto's face. Uzumaki Naruto, full name classified at the highest level, and commonly referred to as Angel, while on missions due to being the possessor of the title of the youngest bingo booker in history. He is also Kage level in Taijutsu, Ninjutsu, Kenjutsu, and Fuinjutsu, with his only weak point being Genjutsu, although that is around ANBU level. Known to the elemental nations as Konoha's Deathly Angel, he is usually accompanied on missions by Hatake Kanako, or Kanako of the Sharingan, and Konoha's Panther, his teammate Sai. He left a blood clone at the academy while undergoing private training from around 7 elite ANBU and undertook many missions while officially only an academy student and a civilian. His mission record rivals that of Hatake Kanako in S-ranked missions and has been recorded to have beaten the current Hokage while limiting himself to only ninjutsu. In short, he is one of the most dangerous individuals currently alive and the only one of those at the age of 12. Full mission record: 15 D ranks, 223 C ranks, 63 B ranks, 32 A ranks, and 14 S rank missions. He is known as Konoha's Angel due to the fact while fighting, he can subconsciously channel chakra to his back and create solid wings. These wings can also interact as part of an ultimate defense and even allow him to fly. He is recorded to have 3 bloodlines, although he only uses one due to the other 2 being classified. The one he uses is his Uzumaki chakra, which allows him to create temporary solid objects due to the quality level of his chakra, which even for known Uzumaki is off the records. It is rumored that it is highly likely that at the end of the Chunin exams his heritage and full ancestry, along with his bloodlines, will be revealed, which have remained classified thus far due to the possibility of causing the 4th Shinobi War, Kabuto said, awing everyone excepting Naruto and Sai. I didn't think that he was that capable even after looking up his status in the bingo book, Yujido thought as she stared at Naruto, awestruck. Naruto was silent as the room silently stared at him, before he finally started to get annoyed by it. "What the hell are you staring at?" he shouted, subconsciously flaring his chakra into his wings. "There he goes, just like Kabuto-sen said he could," Gaia thought as Shikaku's mutterings grew louder in the back of her mind. "All right, maggots, that's enough," the newly arrived proctor shouted, his Chunin assistants behind him. Naruto had spent the majority of the first exam talking with Ka-chan and Kyer-chan in his mindscape while he was waiting for time to pass. Although he did answer the questions so that Ino could use her Shintenshin no Jutsu on him. Sai wouldn't need any help, being trained the same way Naruto was originally. But it had been very interesting to see how various people were cheating their way through, as was the point of course. Gaia had used a sand eyeball, which Naruto had to say was pretty creepy. The Hyugas used their Byakugan, that being the obvious solution as they could see through people and just copy their answers. Kiba and Shino had used their various companions, although Akamaru was a little obvious. Shikamaru had used a good strategy, writing down his answers, being a genius while also writing Choji's using his shadow possession technique. Sakura just knew the answers. The Kumo Shinobi had been tapping their answers out slowly to each other in Morse code. But Naruto thought that Kankuro strategy was the worst, as it was pretty obvious and it only had one chance of success. If it failed, then the Sand siblings were screwed, as they had to pass the first 2 exams as their teams. Naruto shuddered to think at how Gaia would react to them failing in the first exam. She might even kill her siblings. All right, it is now time for the 10th and final question, so you will need to listen to the rules that are attached to this question. 1. If you fail this question, that you will never be allowed to enter the Chunin exams ever again. In other words, you will remain a genin for the rest of your lives. At this, cries of denial and tumult rose up. And how will you stop us? We can just go to another exam next year, at which time the proctor will have changed due to it being in a different village. Kiba cried rather logically. I don't care, my exam, my rules, Ibiki said, shrugging. Naruto was mentally giggling at the game Ibiki was playing. The two had worked alongside each other on several occasions, both being able to break down the minds of those they were interrogating, although Naruto worked best if it was a traitor to the village. However, we are generous. We will give you a chance to leave before the 10th question is given. If you choose to do so, then your teammates fail as well, but you will be able to take the Chunin exams next year. You have 15 minutes to make your decision, Ibiki said before moving off the stage. Over the next 15 minutes, hand rose and fell as people gave in to the mental strain, taking their teammates down with them. Towards the end, however, Hinata cracked and began to raise her hand up. Naruto immediately held it back down before whispering fiercely. Are you going to give up on that promise and be the cause of Team 8 not being there when we spar our friends? Hinata immediately felt ashamed inside, but also gained a sense of conviction. She was going through this for her team. Ibiki, seeing that no one else was going to raise their hand, moved forward to the lectern. Congratulations, you who remain have just passed the first exam. Ibiki waited for the uproar, and he wasn't disappointed. What? Naruto burst out laughing. Their reaction was hilarious. Although after he quieted down, he was roped into explaining the meaning of the first exam because apparently he was a know-it-all. And the final question was to test our resolve. After all, if we can't hold our resolve in here, how are we supposed to hold it out there? Did I get that all right, Ibiki? He finished. Yeah, you got it all, kiddo. Now your next proctor will be someone very familiar to you. Ibiki finished with a slight grin. Ha! Was all Naruto managed to say before the window next to Ibiki was shattered by a flying giant black blur. 15 seconds later. Naruto smashed his head onto the desk. He should have known they would choose her, of all people. Several rows behind him, Sai was having the exact same thoughts. Naruto then smiled. He had just thought of a way to psyche some of the competitors out. "Nei-chan," he shouted, jumping up and running towards the second exam proctor. "Anko." "Naru-chan," Anko shouted back excitedly before they had a massive hug. As they hugged one another, everyone apart from Ino, Ibiki, and Sai thought, "These two know each other. Naruto knows this woman? Are we going to the forest?" Naruto asked rather excitedly. He loves training ground 44. Ino and Sai came up and greeted Anko, who hugged them both as well, while everyone apart from Ibiki just sat and stared at the four of them. "All right, I am the proctor of the second exam. Now you need to be at training ground 44 within half an hour or you fail," Anko said, turning to the rest of the participants before turning back and sunshining to the area with Team 7. Gaia was annoyed. She had just wasted her time getting to training ground 44 due to the misdirection that apparently some people had been ordered to give. That and the thought of Naruto had been weighing on her brain constantly since she had met the boy. For some reason he seems a little familiar, and why would he offer to fix my seal for me? He must know what I am, she thought as she strode towards the second part of the Chunin exams. Naruto, Sai and Ino moved through the forest of death quickly, tree-hopping in order to avoid the predators that stalked the forest floor. They were following a team from Takigakure using Naruto sensory abilities, and due to them having several sessions with Anko in this very forest for training, they stopped briefly before deciding to move ahead of them and lay in ambush. They were able to cover virtually every aspect of the shinobi arts within their team, and as such that meant if they chose the battleground it was suicide for the other team to try and defeat them. As they set up their traps, Ino made sure to make a few obvious ones so they wouldn't see the more hidden and more lethal ones underneath. Naruto was shivering with glee as he drew seals for kunai launchers on nearly every tree in a radius of 50 meters before loading them with a mass amount of kunai. The secret behind these launcher seals, though, was that they were manually controlled by the sealer, in this case Naruto, allowing him to adapt his firing times and number of kunai for the circumstances. It was a death trap. The Taki team, thankfully for them, maintained their current course and walked right into their ambush. The first signs they had of their current situation was when they caught sight of the obvious traps laid by Ino. Unfortunately for them, by that time they were in the middle of the larger death trap created by Naruto. Naruto had actually put ninja wire on a few of his kunai and created a ring of ninja wire around them silently so they couldn't escape easily in case they had some sort of automatic defense. At his command, a mass of kunai rained down upon the trapped team from all directions. They didn't have the time to react, and each member of the team was riddled with at least 25 kunai. Then Naruto and the others rummaged through the remains of the shinobi, hoping that the scroll they were looking hadn't been shredded by the hail of sharp weaponry. It hadn't, and it happened to be an earth scroll, which was what they were looking for. After a meager celebration consisting of Ino cheering quietly and Naruto and Sai humming happy tunes under their breaths, they held a vote on whether they should head straight to the tower or see if they could help out the other Konoha rookies. Ino was all for heading to the tower but didn't really mind either way, and Sai and Naruto agreed that the Kumo team and the Sand siblings were the greatest threat to them. As such, they would constantly monitor both teams using Sai's ink creatures and Naruto's Kage Bunshin, while they rested at a HQ. As such, Sai immediately sent out a variety of birds and small creatures that could climb, such as monkeys to monitor the Kumo team, and Naruto sent a pair of Kage Bunshin to do the same for the Sand team. Meanwhile, they would look for an ideal place for their camp. After an hour and a half of looking, they found an area that was separated from the rest of the area by fallen logs and had a natural rock overhang. Along with the bunch of hungry predators that made their habitat just outside the main entrance, it was extremely unlikely that another team would attack them. After setting up their basic needs in the camp, they decided that they would relax until their friends needed them or until night came. Naruto sent out clones to trail the two other rookie teams, as they didn't include Team 9, knowing they could handle themselves, as a precaution as they didn't know the status of the other teams. Late that evening, just after dusk, Naruto was glad that he had, as according to his clone, Team 10 was having a bit of trouble with the Kusa team. Grabbing the other two who had stayed ready, he shunshined them to the immediate area, resulting in them having to duck under an offensive jutsu that they had been right in the path of. They immediately split up before catching the Kusa team in a pincer movement, with Ino and Sai quickly taking out the two genin to either side before Naruto flipped over a fire jutsu and beheaded the genin. All of this happened while Team 10 was looking on in shock, and Naruto hurriedly walked over to them. Sakura, this is why fangirls have such a high mortality rate. They don't train properly, and are therefore unable to fill their roles on the battlefield, costing lives, Naruto said, fixing her with a steady gaze. Sakura didn't respond, just looked at the ground before beginning to tear up. Shikamaru extended his thanks, but Naruto told him that it was what Konoha Shinobi did. Look out for each other. Thankfully, that was the only time they had to retrieve either of the two teams, as Team 10 had managed to get their scroll from that encounter, while Team 8 were able to use their Kekkei Genkai to avoid the more powerful teams. As such, they were able to go to the tower and relax. Although once they got there, Naruto disappeared for a short amount of time to inform the Hokage of his suspicions concerning one Yakushi Kabuto. The shinobi gathered here are those who have passed the second round of the Chunin exams. Now the Hokage would like to make a speech concerning the meaning behind the exams themselves, Anko said in a rather bored tone, which a person could also see clearly on her face. As the Hokage began his speech, Naruto's attention shifted onto different things, as was usually the case when he realized the Hokage was about to make a long speech. Why does this always happen to me when I hear the old man beginning to talk? Naruto thought drearily, as he soaked up some information from the speech passively, something about being a replacement for war, although Naruto refocused his attention once he realized that the old man was done and Gekko Heiate, one of the former ANBU that had trained him, was moving forward. All right, due to the number of people that passed the second exam, we shall be having a preliminary round, so that only a small proportion go to the finals, the cream of the crop. Heiate coughed his way through the sentence. Why can't we all go to the finals? Kiba asked. Because if you all won to the finals, they would take about 3 days to complete, and some of the matches would be very boring. The finals are to attract sponsors, while the previous 2 tests have tested your mentality and teamwork, neither of which show how one can fare on their own against an opponent just as strong as them. In essence, the preliminaries are to stop you from embarrassing yourself in front of a huge crowd. The Hokage couldn't help but put in. Thank you, Hokage-sama. Now the preliminaries will be randomized, although due to his nature, Uzumaki Naruto will not be fighting. Heiate started. What? But I am getting so bored here, Naruto screamed out. Heiate, I think it will be okay if Naruto spars someone, otherwise he is going to annoy the hell out of everyone else, and we both know what tends to be the result of that, Hiruzen said, remembering the last time something like this happened. Naruto had gotten so annoyed and bored that he tripled the Hokage's paperwork through a devastating pranking spree. He shuddered at the memory. Well, in that case, Uzumaki-san will be allowed to fight. Now, as before, you will be given a chance to drop out before the preliminaries, but this time your decision will not affect your teammates. However, you will need to provide a valid reason as to why you are dropping out. So, is there anyone who wants to drop out? Heiate continued. A few of the shinobi from Taki, Kusa, Kumo and Kiri dropped out, having sustained serious injuries while in the forest of death. However, everyone was mildly surprised when Kabuto elected to drop out, claiming he had chakra exhaustion. Orochimaru, disguised as a Kusa Jounin, looked down at the exam competitors. He knew that Hiruzen knew he was here, but thanks to the correspondence that Itachi and Naruto shared, he didn't have to worry about being attacked. As he watched on, he was briefly annoyed once more that Sasuke wasn't in the exams, although once he heard of the reason why he understood. He had actually been good friend with Minato and therefore with Kushina, so he understood Naruto's feeling of being rather touchy of the subject of family. His teammate and friend Jiraiya had been the same when they were genin. As the genin filed up onto the balconies, they split into their teams, although Naruto and his team talked with Team 8 and the Kumo team about their journey through the forest. After around 15 minutes of waiting around as a pair of Chunin were entering their names into the match generator, the choosing of their matches began. Akadu Yoroi versus Sai. Ah man, you're so lucky. Getting to go first? Naruto whined, turning to Sai. Excuse me, but who has the best luck at gambling? You've almost become a gambling god, Sai retorted jokingly before turning and leaping over the railing. The others didn't say anything. They didn't need to. They knew what the outcome of this match was going to be. Meanwhile, Naruto was muttering under his breath. Ever since Tsunade had introduced him to gambling a few years ago, he hadn't lost a single bet, and in the casinos of Konoha they were referring to him as the Lord of Gambles. It's a completely ridiculous title, Naruto moaned mentally. Sai watched as his opponent walked down the steps from the opposite balcony, seeing if he could gain information on his fighting style by the way he walked and the way he stood. At the same time, he was reviewing information that he had gleaned on this guy earlier in his head. He knew that his opponent had the ability to suck chakra from a person. He was essentially a chakra leech, but he had no information on how he was able to do this. It could be a long-range ninjutsu technique, or it could be a touch-contact transfer, which Sai determined was more likely. Therefore, this would be a taijutsu fight, as his opponent would try to stay in constant contact to avoid him using ninjutsu. Are both fighters ready? Height asked from the side. Sai nodded at one of the two jounins who had taught him kenjutsu, while Yoroi didn't say anything. Hajime. Sai waited to see if his prediction was correct, and was proven that it was when Yoroi moved back a few paces and gripped his right wrist with his left hand, before his hand was covered in a dull glow. When Yoroi looked back up at Sai, having been concentrating on his hand, he saw that he had disappeared, and immediately began looking around in an attempt to find him. He found him a few minutes later, sitting upside down on the ceiling and drawing. Yoroi prepared to jump after him, but before he could do so, he heard Sai's voice. Ink style. Lightning Ink Panther. The eyes of many watching Shinobi widened as they saw a huge panther made of ink assemble itself from the pages of Sai's book. Then after it was completed, blue lightning began to flow along the lines of ink. That is a unique fighting style, Orochimaru thought, and it would be difficult to defeat due to the odd element. Everyone watched as the panther ran across the ceiling and down a wall before leaping at Yoroi, who quickly dodged it, unsure if he should attack due to the lightning flowing across the ink construct. However, he wasn't given much time to think of a strategy as the panther began to hunt him relentlessly, driving him towards a corner and forcing to defend against it rather than move out of the way. Yoroi knew he had made the wrong move as the panther impacted against his arms, and the lightning flowed from the panther to him, causing all of his upper body muscles to contract and seize up. Sai then lazily shunshined behind him and knocked him out, before leaving Yoroi for the Mednines present to pick up, going back up to his team. Well, it seems that somebody has had a few new ideas, Yujito thought as she regarded Sai relaxing with his team. Shikaku is screaming for that boy's blood as well, but not as much as Uzumaki's, Gaia thought as she glared at Team 7. Abumi Zaku versus Aburame Shino. Shino looked up at the sound team on the other balcony, examining the genin he was about to face. One of his arms was in a cast, obviously having been injured in an encounter in the Forest of Death. The two were quiet as they made their way onto the floor and facing each other. It is illogical to fight in the condition that you are in, Abumi-san, Shino said, mouth unseen behind his collar. Are both fighters ready? Height asked and didn't receive a response, so he started the match. Zaku immediately went on the offensive, trying to blast Shino away with a sound jutsu. This was negated by Shino when it was revealed that Shino was a bug clone. Zaku immediately turned around to find Shino standing quietly behind him, and was about to try and hit him again before Shino spoke. It is over, Abumi-san. If you attack me, then you shall be overwhelmed by my bugs behind you from my clone, and if you attack them, then I will be able to knock you out or kill you. Zaku looked behind him to see that Shino was speaking the truth. There was a mass of chakra-leeching bugs behind him. Zaku sighed before he spoke. And whoever said that I wasn't able to use both of my arms? While he said this, he unraveled the sling holding up his left arm and aimed it at the bugs, while he had his right arm pointed at Shino. Shino made no attempt to move and spoke quietly. I really wouldn't do that if I were you. Zaku ignored him and roared as he activated his sound jutsu, or at least tried to. Sakura and Team 10 gasped in horror as Zaku's arms imploded, while everyone else remained quiet. Shino explained to Zaku what he had done before Zaku blacked out from blood loss and sheer pain. I really wish he hadn't done that, Zaku. His team and my Sound 4 are among the few that I trust completely, Orochimaru thought. Still, I can't blame him, it was a very good strategy. Kankuro versus Tsurugi Misumi. Naruto and the other contenders watched what seemed to be a game of dares between the Sand and Konoha Nin. Eventually Misumi moved in and engaged in a taijutsu match with the puppeteer. After a few blows they paused, with their hands still connected in a guard. All of a sudden, Misumi seemed to flow in a rather disproportionate manner, as if something had changed with his skeletal structure. I'll have you know that I am able to dislocate every joint in my body, allowing me to restrain and defeat my opponent by snapping their neck, Misumi said, now holding Kankuro in a chokehold while his legs were restraining Kankuro's limbs. I suggest that you surrender before I am forced to take your life. I will not hesitate to do so if necessary, Misumi continued. I will not surrender, Kankuro growled out furiously. Everyone apart from the sand team looked concerned. It seemed that Kankuro would be the first to die in the preliminaries. Misumi just shrugged and proceeded to break Kankuro's neck, and hung on as Kankuro's head slumped. Oddly, after Kankuro's head was bowed, small pieces seemed to be falling from his face. Hayate stepped forward to announce the match. Due to his opponent dash, he was interrupted as Kankuro straightened and showed that it wasn't Kankuro Misumi had killed, but his puppet. The puppet's head spun around and stared straight at Misumi, creeping the hell out of him, before metallic ropes and wires wrapped around his body, keeping him anchored to the puppet. The huge package fell off of the puppet's back, unwrapping itself to reveal that Kankuro had been in there the entire time and was controlling his puppet with chakra strings through the bandages. He then proceeded to use his puppet to break Misumi's bones one by one. After releasing him from the puppet, Hayate announced the match and Medic Nin came and took Misumi off to the hospital. Thank God I was hesitant in announcing the match earlier, Hayate thought, knowing of the ribbing he could have received from such an outcome. Well, that was a short match, Sai said as he turned to face his team while leaning on the rail. Yes, although if Kankuro's opponent had used ninjutsu, he would have been in trouble, as it takes time to unravel himself, and inside he was trapped, unable to move. Ino contributed. Kanako smiled as she watched her team discuss the recent matches. It reminded her of her own time as a genin, although that was rather short. Everyone's attention was grabbed as the match generator landed on two names. Both names knew the other, in fact they had been very good friends in the past, but that was in the past. Yamanaka Ino versus Haruno Sakura. Both girls looked at each other along the first of the collective balconies before walking slowly down the stairs to the arena. I know that I need to concentrate on my training after the incident we had in the forest, but I don't know if I can fight Ino. After all, she has been training with an S-rank ninja. But I can't just quit, Sakura thought worriedly as she made her way down. Ino just steeled herself for the beating she was about to inflict on a former friend. Hajime! At the cry for them to begin, Sakura immediately created a few basic clones in an effort to try and distract Ino, but Ino had seen it coming from the third hand seal, by which time the type of jutsu could be told. She discarded the other clones, moving in behind Sakura with a seal-less shunshin, surprising many members of the crowd. However, Sakura had managed to guess where Ino would shunshin to and quickly moved out of the way of her incoming strikes. Ino continued her barrage, moving forward and back into striking range very quickly. Eventually Ino got through, smashing her palm into Sakura's solar plexus, and the match was over very quickly after that, with Ino knocking Sakura out with the blunt end of a kunai. Over on the balcony, Asuma watched as Sakura was having the crap beaten out of her, and was quickly becoming rather ashamed at his laziness at being a sensei. He reflected over his time with his team so far and realized he had spent more time playing Shikamaru in shogi than training the other two members of his team. That was all well and fine for the genius, as he could adapt to pretty much all situations, but for the other two it was downright appalling. However, there was the issue of Ino being on a team with two S-rank ninja and the last being an A-rank, but even so, anyone here could probably beat Sakura in a fight. He vowed that he would spend the time over the month before the Chunin exam finals to train Sakura and Choji, both of whom he doubted would qualify for the event. Team 7 just nodded their head. The fight had confirmed their thoughts. It was rather obvious in the light of the scene that Asuma hadn't been training his genin properly. And Kanako mused that if she had the chance, she could try and train Sakura over the next month, along with Haku and Kurino, as Naruto had told her that Sakura had realized she needed the training while in the Forest of Death. She would have the time to spare, as no one in her current team would be trained by her, as that would be showing favoritism in her books. Instead, they were going to be trained by members of the ANBU that had trained Naruto and Sai while the former was in the academy. Tenten versus Temari. Damn, that is probably the worst match for Tenten, Naruto said as he looked at the match generator. All the others nodded in agreement. Tenten relied on distance weapons and she was about to go up against a wind user. Although if she managed to close the gap she had a good chance, as Temari, to their information, wasn't very good on close combat. Sure, she could hold her own in taijutsu, but she wouldn't sacrifice her fan for a kenjutsu match. Tenten walked down the stairs stolidly. From what she had seen from the sand team and Temari from watching a battle of theirs while in the forest, Temari had a wind affinity. God damn it. This is going to be a tough battle, she thought determinedly. Temari knew little of Tenten's skill but was confident that she would win. With the exception of the team of Konoha's Deathly Angel and perhaps the primary Kumo team, the team from Suna was probably the strongest contender for becoming Chunins. Hajime! Tenten immediately jumped back, flinging kunai at Temari, hoping to catch her off guard. Temari in response quickly pulled her huge fan off of her back and used a wide-range wind jutsu to disrupt the flight of the sharp metal objects heading her way. This had the extra effect of buffeting Tenten into the wall of the room behind her. Tenten used the opportunity to shunshin behind Temari, succeeding in bypassing her main defense of wind justice in order to attack close in. Quickly unsealing a katana from one of her storage scrolls, Tenten immediately went on the attack, forcing Temari to dodge as best as she could, not wanting her fan, which was the conductor of many of her jutsus, to be shredded by the sharp blade. This went on for a while, with both Teams 7 and 9 feeling confident of Tenten's victory now that she had closed the gap, before Temari managed to remake it by using her own shunshin to get out of trouble. Tenten, feeling less confident now, as she knew that her previous tactic wouldn't work twice, resealed her katana and pulled out 2 scrolls which she threw above her and began to spiral down and around her. She jumped up before unsealing weapons sealed with the spiraling scrolls and throwing them at Temari, but none of them managed to get through her wind jutsu. Eventually Temari had enough playing around and used a strong gust of wind chakra to blow Tenten from her position, all the weapons in the air raining down harmlessly on the floor. She then used what looked to be a small tornado jutsu in which Tenten was captured and cut all over her body repeatedly. After about 30 seconds of Tenten by cut relentlessly by the jutsu, Temari ran out of chakra to continue and released it, at the same time moving under Tenten's rapidly falling body. Naruto, seeing that Tenten was going to injure her spine unnecessarily on impact with Temari's fan, moved quickly, speeding over the railing and catching Tenten while standing on one foot on the end of the fan. Temari saw little more than a blur, before she saw Naruto setting down Tenten on the balcony with her team. Walking stiffly up the steps, everyone was discussing the match, not seeing Naruto's Sharingan activate accidentally in anger as he glared at Temari's back. Nara Shikamaru vs Tsuchikin. Well, this is going to be boring, Naruto commented on the matchup. Yeah, you don't say. Shika will win, but he'll somehow manage to do it in the most boring way possible, Sai said, laughter clear in his voice. However, the attention of Team 7 was grabbed when Haku and Kurino walked along the balcony towards them, having slipped into the room earlier after gaining permission to watch the prelims. What are you two doing here? Kanako asked, taking her eyes off of her book briefly. Well, we managed to get permission to watch from the Hokage, and the children are being watched over by Nico, Ibiki, and Enko, Kurino said, before asking about the previous matches. Kanako then told them of the results and winning moves, before mentioning her plans for perhaps having Sakura train with them for the next month. If she wants to and is willing to train hard, then I have no problems with it, sensei, Haku said after hearing of it, but was slightly doubtful. After all, this was a fangirl they were talking about. Kurino made a motion of agreement with her before they realized that Shikamaru's match was over, him having won by knocking Kin out on the wall behind her. Kiba versus Samui. Both competitors grinned as they saw each other's names on the match generator. They had been looking forward to their spar against the other teams that had been present in Wave, and this was the first matching of any of the members of the 3 teams. Kiba and Samui jumped into the arena and took their places opposite each other, knowing that the other had been training ever since their collective mission, and that either way it would be a tough match. Hajime, the members of Team 7 and 8 and the primary Kumo team all leaned forward, eager to see the progress of their 2 friends. Kiba leaped forward. Samui was caught slightly off guard by his new speed, but was able to dodge his tackle in time, and withdrew her tanto as Kiba turned back towards her. Kiba stared at her for a few moments, assessing his chances, before he sighed and backed off slightly. I had hoped that I would be able to reveal these later, but if I don't now, I will just be wasting my time against you, Kiba said, pulling off a set of weights that had been hidden under his jacket and pants, causing a minor dust cloud. Samui's eyes widened slightly. I was barely able to avoid him before, and he was wearing weights? Kiba moved forward once more, this time slightly faster, forcing Samui to dive to one side. However, as he passed her, her tanto whipped out quickly, cutting into his right arm slightly. He considered the cut before shrugging, deciding that it wasn't too serious. While he was doing so, Samui was focusing and trying to channel her chakra in order to use a lightning technique to try and slow Kiba down, but she hit an alternative idea, Why not use lightning chakra on herself and speed up to his level instead? Determined to try this new idea, Samui focused her lightning nature chakra to her legs, knowing that if this worked, it would likely win her the match. As she stepped off towards the Inuzuka, she accidentally released her chakra in a burst. Shit! I lost focus. She cursed before realizing that the side effect was she had effectively shot off at high speed towards the mystified boy. Samui smiled slightly. It seemed that her mistake had done what she was initially aiming for. Naruto and the others watched as the match became a high-speed taijutsu battle, with only Naruto and Kanako working out what Samui had done had been a mistake, but one that she started to use as an actual technique. If he masters use of that mistaken technique and speed herself up at the same time, she has the potential to be on the level of the Yondaime Reikage, Kanako mused while watching the two. Eventually Kiba withdrew and used Tsuga, the rotation drill technique that he had used against Karui in their spar in Wave. However, as he sped towards Samui, he had no idea that Samui had swapped with a Raibunshin that she had created due to the high-speed rotations of his technique. Thus, when he impacted with her Bunshin, he got the shock of his life, quite literally. When he stopped spinning, he was unable to move at his normal speed, the lightning chakra causing his limbs to seize up. Well, it seems that Samui has outsmarted Kiba, Naruto said as he turned back to his team, who nodded in agreement. Hyuga Hinata versus Hyuga Niji. At the result that the match generator had given, many amongst the Konoha shinobi looked concerned. Many, especially the higher-ups, knew of Niji's hate for the main branch of the Hyuga clan. Niji blamed Hinata for his father's death, due to him being sacrificed so that Hayashi, the current clan head and Niji's uncle, could live. He was also set against the main family due to their cursed seal that they forced upon the branch family, which allowed them to control the branch members, even allowing them to inflict pain without reprisal. Guy watched grimly as his student descended into the arena, knowing that Niji's anger would most likely get the better of him, as did all of the Konoha senseis Naruto and Sai. Ino knew of Niji's hate for the main family, but didn't know how deep it ran, so was more concerned with the outcome of the match rather than Hinata's survival. Hajime. Right from the start, everyone who was watching closely could see Niji's anger beginning to release itself as he and Hinata matched each other blow for blow. Eventually Niji began to pull ahead as he forced Hinata on the defensive, raining down the deadly strikes of the gentle fist, while Hinata did her best to block them with her injuries, forcing her to draw back several times. Several times Niji landed shots on her torso, causing Hinata to collapse to her knees while he began to belittle her, causing anger to flare among some of the spectators, mainly Kurenai, Kanako, Hiruzen, Naruto, Sai and Kurino. However, he finally lost any pretense of calm as he witnessed Hinata slowly rise and challenge him once more, charging at her with the intent to kill, even though she was in no position to fight once more. As he charged her with his Byakugan blazing in anger, several blurs leapt over the balcony to intervene, as Hayate did the same. All of the spectators were treated to both Naruto and Sai having Niji at sword point, with Naruto's ninjados crossing in front of his throat, and Sai holding his leading hand while his tanto was above Niji's heart while Sai was crouching. The Jounin immediately moved forward to defuse the situation, although Hayate and Kurenai, along with Kurino, were more concerned for Hinata's safety and recovery. The medic Nin had begun moving into the arena as soon as they saw Niji being detained. So even now the main family gets preferential treatment. Niji spat bitterly. She was wounded, and you were intending to kill her, even after you had humiliated her in front of the Hokage. But now you are just humiliating yourself by acting this way. Also, did the thought ever occur to you that not once did she activate your cagebird seal, even though it was fully within her right as the heiress? You humiliated her, and she still insisted on fighting you properly, not resorting to that. She honored you. Did you ever think of that? Naruto asked, as his eyes started to blaze in anger. Due to Hyuga Hinata being in critical condition, Hyuga Niji is the victor, Hayate announced after the Jounin senseis had managed to convince Naruto and Sai to release Niji. The Jounin, Naruto and Sai remained in the arena as the match generator started to flick through names once more, before landing on two that made Naruto grin. Uzumaki Naruto versus Naruto Jogu. Naruto immediately turned to the Hokage as his opponent. Ataki Genin descended slowly into the arena. Hokage-sama? Permission to release ice? The Hokage pondered the question before nodding in acquiescence, believing the time was right for Naruto to start revealing his special abilities. Naruto grinned as he turned to face his opponent, as did all the Konoha Jounin present apart from Asuma, as most had either been involved in training Naruto or had worked with him on a mission. Naruto, it seemed, would be going up a very large genin who wielded a zanbatsu a bit like Haku's, and was obviously more focused on pure strength rather than speed, shown by the pieces of samurai-like armor he wore. Naruto grinned. Bringing down these sort was a very dear pastime to him, as he liked to show them why strength without speed was useless, although in the past, by the time they learned that, it was already too late. Hajime. You may be Konoha's deathly angel, although I very much doubt that, but you are no match for my Kenjutsu, well, not with those twigs anyway, and water jutsu, which is the best for someone our age, Jogu boasted, unaware of the line he had stepped across. There was one thing Naruto hated: people doubting him as being Konoha's angel, and there was no doubt that that was what Jogu had just done. You will regret saying that, Naruto vowed. Ha! Try and make me. Are you both ready to start? Hayate asked in a bored voice. The Taki genin had just signed his own death warrant. You know that. Am I more than ready? Naruto said, staring straight at Jogu, who just nodded. That stare was starting to unnerve him. Hajime. Naruto and Jogu just continued to stare at one another, racking up the tension. You know, since your strengths are in Kenjutsu and water jutsu, I will only fight you using those, Naruto glared. Fine by me, but expect not to win, Jogu chuckled, pulling the zanbatsu off his back. Naruto made no move to unsheath his ninjatos, instead unsealing a black okatana from a fuinjutsu seal on his wrist. I don't think that you're worth the use of my ninjatos. You wouldn't last long if I did use them, Naruto said, smiling thinly. Jogu immediately charged in, anger overwhelming his common sense, with his zanbatsu trailing across the ground, causing sparks to rise behind him. Naruto just stood calmly, but his mind was racing through potential attack motions that Jogu could use. To the spectators, they saw Jogu charging in, but the next moment they saw Jogu holding his face off to one side, zanbatsu lying forgotten to one side, while Naruto had changed position, having turned his back to where Jogu had started the match from. What the hell happened? Kiba explained, confused as to what had happened. Kanako, having used her Sharingan to capture the moment before analyzing it in her mind, explained. It seems that Jogu went for a massive downward strike, putting all of his weight behind it. Then Naruto deflected it slightly to one side before trapping under his own sword. Kanako noticed that all on the balcony were listening in to her explanation. He then kicked Jogu in the cheek, putting him off balance, before kicking the sword from his grasp. He was able to do that all in one move? Kiba asked, awed. There is a reason that some consider him a prodigy with the potential to be the greatest shinobi since the Rakudu Sennin. He is the youngest person in history to be a bingo booker, and is the youngest person able to challenge 2 Kage-level shinobi at once. Kanako elaborated, slightly sad that her Otudo was a very good weapon when necessary. What? When did he do that? Kankuro asked in utter shock, while all the other genin were awed. He once challenged Jiraiya and Tsunade of the Sennin to a duel, both of them against him. Only the Sandaime and the top Anbu captains were permitted to watch, along with those who had trained him. Let's just say that he was able to knock the stuffing out of those two, although he did have to spend a while in the hospital afterwards, Kanako said, smiling slightly at the memory of Jiraiya's face. All of the genin returned to watching the match. It seemed that Naruto had waited patiently while Jogu recovered, and the latter had decided to try his water ninjutsu instead, realizing that he was totally outclassed in Kenjutsu. I didn't even see him move. 1 second he was still as I charged. The next I was over here, Jogu thought, reaching for his flask on his belt. The flask was special to him as it had seals on it, which allowed it to be bigger on the inside, and was able to hold around 2.5 cubic meters of water. Opening the flask, Jogu allowed the water to pour out before preparing for a water jutsu. You will pay for that, Jogu roared, while Naruto just stared at him coldly once more. Water style, water bullets. Naruto watched passively as the water bullets sped towards him, before holding one hand out and channeling chakra through it, the result being that the bullets were now rings, the centers having been blown out. Naruto then halted the rings and held them in midair with only his chakra, before closing his fist and reopening it. Haku and Kurino, along with Ino, were shocked out of their minds as the rings turned from water to ice. This was the first they had heard of it, and the others thought it was one of his classified bloodlines. What none of them knew was that Naruto's Senju bloodline was a lot more than that. What ensued was a game of cat and mouse. Naruto was controlling the ice rings using chakra strings, while Jogu was doing his best to dodge and avoid them, as he had realized that they were very sharp when one scratched his cheek. There was just one problem. Due to him canceling his speed training, Jogo didn't have the reflexes or the flexibility necessary to dodge, and eventually Naruto got him into a position where he would lose both arms if he didn't surrender. He gave in. As Naruto jumped back up onto the balcony, he saw the questioning gazes of Ino, Haku, and Kurino and sighed. He knew he would have had to deal with this sooner or later. What was that? Haku asked fiercely. Later, Naruto replied, delaying his answer. Gaia versus Rock Lee. Oh, this is going to be a tough one for both sides, Naruto whistled. Obviously, you don't know what Gaia is capable of, Temari remarked from the side. Oh, I know very well what Gaia is capable of. I had a mission in Suna 2 years ago, and I was there when she crushed several of her friends into nothing more than blood. But the thing is that she has a reactive ultimate defense, so what happens when her opponent is faster than the defense? She won't be getting through this without a scratch. It seems that it is time for her know the pain of her first injuries, Naruto commented, ignoring the outrage coming from the Suna Shinobi about him being on a mission there a few years ago. If there is one thing Lee is, it's fast, Sai added, nodding. We should be quiet. This match will be legendary, Naruto said, leaning forward after pulling his hood up and discreetly activating his Sharingan. I look forward to fighting against a shinobi of such great strength, Lee declared as he faced Gaia, who was facing him quietly, looking more annoyed than anything else. Hajime. Before Lee could do anything, Gaia removed the stopper from her gourd, and sand poured out. Over on the balcony, Naruto just nodded. That action just proved his thoughts. Gaia relied on her sand defense too much. Lee quickly moved forward, at speed that were the fastest of the genin present minus Naruto, Sai, and perhaps Ino. Leaf Hurricane. Lee's legs slammed into Gaia's sand defense, unable to get through and forcing Lee on the defensive, pulling out a kunai and slicing through the sand trying to smother him before he had to retreat. Temari grinned. It seemed that Gaia had this in hand, and Naruto was wrong, but she didn't know of the weights that Lee wore. As Lee managed to escape from being crushed by Gaia's sand, he landed on the monument at the far end of the room, and he stayed before Guy spoke up from his position on the balcony. Lee, take them off. But sensei, you said that the condition was only when I was protecting those very important to me or if it was necessary for a mission. Lee objected. This time I'll make an exception. Lee grinned slowly, before sitting down and pulling down his orange ankle warmers to reveal a pair of leg weights, and taking them off. Everyone apart from Lee, Guy, Kanako, Naruto, Sai, Niji, Tenten, and Ino were aghast. This was his secret weapon? Oh, come on. There is no way that is going to help, Temari said, frustrated by the idiocy of this competitor. Ah, that is better. You should feel honored. The only ones to challenge me at our age when I take these off are Naruto, Sai, Niji, and now you, Lee declared before dropping the weights. Everyone was awed out of their minds when the weights impacted with the floor. They literally tore through 1.5 inches of concrete before coming to a stop and causing a massive dust cloud and cracks to spiderweb for meters around the impact. The Hokage and many of the Jounin immediately looked at Guy as if he was insane before returning to the match, eager to see how this was equalize the fight. Gaia just glared at Lee, undisturbed by the amount of weights Lee had been wearing, before her eyes widened as Lee disappeared to all but Team 7, Team 9 and the Jounin and Hokage. He reappeared behind Gaia, punching through his defense due to the speed he now possessed before disappearing once more, each time reappearing to punch or kick his way through the sand. Gaia was very, very scared. This was the fastest person she had ever faced, and now it looked like her sand wouldn't be able to keep up. Up on the balcony, Kankuro, Temari, and Baki were having the same sort of thoughts. Eventually, Lee got through and was able to scratch Gaia on the cheek, causing the Suna team to gasp in surprise that Gaia had finally been touched in battle. Even though it looked like Lee now had a chance as he was too fast for Gaia, Gaia revealed that she was wearing sand armor, and that in actuality, she hadn't been touched. Lee had just scratched the armor. My Kami, does this girl have any weaknesses? Kiba shouted in exasperation. Kid, if only you knew, that armor is one big weak spot, due to the amount of chakra that Gaia has to use to keep it on, Kankuro reflected, disturbed that she had resorted to the armor. During the course of the match, everyone was awed at some point or another due to the feats of the two shinobi in front of them. Lee used the primary lotus in order to try and bring Gaia down, but both Naruto and Kanako realized it was useless when they saw Gaia swap with a hollow sand clone just in time. This caused Lee to destroy his muscles while Gaia bypassed his technique and eventually paid him back in pain, driving Naruto close to intervening with the match. Then everyone was awed when Lee managed to open the first 5 celestial chakra gates through sheer effort, a feat thought impossible, and then proceeded to beat Gaia around the arena before activating the hidden lotus. This time he caught Gaia, but she managed to soften her fall by turning her gourd itself into sand, even though she still bore the brunt of the impact, being sent through the concrete floor several feet thick. As such, Gaia was still able to send her sand after Lee while she healed. While Lee was unable to move, his muscles having shredded themselves during the technique, and she was able to crush his left leg and arm. Then Naruto and Guy intervened, Guy stopping her from completely crushing his student, while Naruto stopped her and threatened her that if she didn't stop, he would never heal Shikaku. Gaia just froze before getting up and shining back to the balcony. This is odd. It seems that he is suggesting that there is something wrong with Shikaku, as if he shouldn't be like this, but he has always been this way, so how would he know the difference? How could he even come to that conclusion? The only ones that would know would be the Bijou unless… No, he is a Jinchuriki. Gaia thought frantically, ignoring the remarks of her sister. She realized that if anyone would be able to help her, he would. After all, it sounded like he was on good terms with his Bijou, and he had offered to fix her seal for her, did he not? Naruto watched as Omoi and Yujito quickly and efficiently demolished their opponents, teammates of Jogu from Taki. He wasn't really paying attention, thinking over the match between Gaia and Lee and the possible consequences. After all, he had interfered in all 3 matches of Team 9, and even he couldn't get away with that without consequences. And at the same time, he would have to tell the Hokage about Haku's and Kurino's curiosity involving his bloodline and heritage. Better they hear from him than others. Although on the plus side, he could stop living a lie to his own village in just over a month, along with the fact that the finals were going to be exciting. The Sandaime had something special planned for an exhibition of his skills. As such, he stayed behind to talk with the Sandaime along with his team, Kurino and Haku, as he had told Kanako earlier about their interest, and she had decided that it was probably time for Ino to learn as well. Hokage-sama, I and the others of my team, including the 2 attaches, would like to speak to you privately in your office concerning my heritage and bloodlines, Naruto said, kneeling. Hiruzen was silent before responding. Very well, let us go. And with that, the 7 of them shined into his office. All right, what is this about, Naruto? Hiruzen asked as he seated himself behind his desk. Gigi, I asked for a private audience, Naruto said, refusing to say anything until he knew that they were alone. Ah yes, I forgot, Hiruzen said, chuckling at Naruto's stubbornness, before sending out his personal Anbu that were within the room. Naruto waited until they were all out, before putting his strongest privacy barrier on the door, sealing off the people inside the room. Okay, Gigi, can you tell Ino, Haku, and Kurino of my true heritage, bloodlines, burden, all of it, as I would probably go off on a tangent or something, Naruto said, scratching the back of his head. Kanako grinned. It seemed that Naruto was trying to get the Hokage to explain everything. Hiruzen sighed and puffed on his pipe several times before beginning to explain Naruto's heritage to the 3 curious genin, as that was the key to the other 2 subjects. Half an hour later, Ino was in complete and utter shock that she was on a team with the person closest to being classified as Konoha's prince due to his heritage, strength, and pure wealth. However, this was tinged by anger as she recalled the Hokage's mention of the atrocities that Naruto suffered as a child. It was then that Ino would come up with a name that Naruto would be labeled as by Konoha historians and writers after his death, the Fallen Lord. Haku and Kurino meanwhile were struck by the same thing, but also by the pure strength of Naruto's bloodlines. Hell, even if he relied on them overly much, he would still be one of the strongest ninjas alive. Well, since you are here, Naruto, I have an assignment for you, Hiruzen said, moving on to other matters. Which is? Naruto asked, not that upset that he wouldn't be able to train over the month. I need you to watch Sabaku no Gaia, as she is a Jinchuriki, but Suna never notified us of this, so something is off, Hiruzen said, eyes narrowing slightly. Consider it done, Naruto said. To be honest, he had expected it to be something outside of the village, so he was rather happy with this. He would be able to train after all. Other than that, there is nothing else, so you can work out training schedules and so on whenever you wish. Dismissed, Hiruzen said, before returning to his paperwork. Outside the tower. All right, I have asked around and there are more than enough people interested in training you 2 for the month, Kanako said, pointing at Ino and Sai. Nay, Sensei. When do we receive notice of who we are facing in our matches? Ino asked, as none of them had received any indication of their future opponents. What happens is that you train for 3 weeks to anticipate all potential opponents. Then you receive the match lineup a week before the finals, allowing you to plan strategy for each of them. However, it goes without saying that this will depend on the outcome on each match, especially in the earlier rounds, Kanako said, glad that someone had asked. All right, Ino, Yuzuki Yugao, and Mitarashi Anko have both expressed interest in training you. You can meet them in Training Ground 7. Sai, both Guy and Hei-8 are waiting for you in Training Ground 13. And Naruto, both Yamato and Jiraiya will be waiting for you in Training Ground 43 if you wish to train with them. All 3 genin nodded before racing off, and Kanako turned to Haku and Kurino, who were still trying to deal with the revelation of Naruto's heritage. Hey, you two, snap out of it. We need to find Pinky, Kanako said, snapping her fingers in front of their faces. With Sakura. Sakura was wandering around, trying to find one of the Jounin senseis, as she had finally been cured of the fangirlism that she had shown for so long. We found her. Hey, Sakura. Sakura turned to see Hatake Kanako, the Jounin sensei of Team 7, coming towards her. Sakura, I have seen that you have finally stopped being a fangirl, so we are here to ask if you want to train with us over the month? Kanako said, smiling at the look on Sakura's face. You mean that you will really train me? Sakura asked eagerly. It was perfect. She had just been looking for this. And voila, Kanako nodded, seeing how eager Sakura was for proper training. 5 minutes later, Kanako and the 2 attaches of Team 7 set off with the pink-haired genin in tow. With Ino, the blonde walked into Training Ground 7 cautiously. She had heard of Anko and her antics from both Naruto and Sai, so it was safe to say that she was wary of any traps that she might have set up. All of a sudden, Kunai came shooting at her from either side, catching her in the crossfire. Ino was already used to this, however, due to Naruto's kunai launcher seals, so she simply shined straight to the center of the training ground, where it seemed that Yugao was waiting. Let me guess. Anko tried to ambush you as you walked into the training ground? She asked, knowing of the woman's hobbies, having been in ANBU with her. Yes, Yugao-sensei, Ino said, before turning and facing back towards the entrance, where she saw that Anko had come out and was walking towards the 2 of them, annoyed that Ino had escaped. Well, the 2 of us have requested to train you for the Chunin exam finals. With me, we shall be working on your kenjutsu, as you simply need more experience, while Anko will be training you in traps and tactical thinking, although I think she also has something special to give you, Yugao said, motioning towards Ino's chikudo at the start. Yep, you better be ready, girl, or otherwise this is going to hurt, Anko said, coming up to the 2 of them. Oh, and Ino, we have something to tell you concerning the finals and Naruto. You see, the Hokage has something special planned that will involve Naruto going up against the specialists of each field in Konoha. It will be a message to those attending. Now, Hei-8, Kanako, Sai and I are going to be going up against him in Kenjutsu, and we would like you to join us in that match. But the only way is if we convince Hokage-sama that you're approaching the level of a Kenjutsu master, Yugao said, cocking her head to one side as she waited for Ino's answer. With Sai. Sai sighed as he walked to Training Ground 13. He knew that training with Guy and Hei-8 would be worth it, but he wasn't sure if he could stomach Guy's attitude. Then again, if Guy was serious, then that would be creepy, but it was likely that he was, after all, he had just had his protege get the crap beaten out of him. That, and he knew that Hei-8 would be driving him into the ground with his kenjutsu due to the Hokage's meddling. Still, he did need to improve those along with his close combat ninjutsu, so he was reasonably happy. With Naruto. Hey, Ero Sennin, Naruto shouted cheerfully as he walked into Training Ground 43 to see Jiraiya sitting peacefully on a tree stump. God damn it, Gaki. Will you stop calling me that? Jiraiya said, ruining aforementioned peace and quiet. Not until you stop writing those perverted books, Naruto said, remembering the first time Kanako had revealed what was in the damn things, and shivered. Anyway, as Yamato is on a mission for the first week, I shall be your instructor for this week. Then he shall have you the week after to help you with your Mokuton. Then the week after that you shall have a teacher that you haven't seen for some time, Jiraiya said, knowing that when Naruto learned who this teacher was, he would burst with happiness. Someone I haven't seen for a long time. Huh? No. Naruto thought, trying to work the identity of the mysterious teacher out. Oh, no way. Are you telling me I can meet Itachi again? Naruto shouted, absolutely demanding to know if the teacher was his Inai-san. Jiraiya just nodded silently, knowing and awaiting Naruto's reaction. Yes. Awesome. Ni-san is coming back. Naruto shouted, jumping in glee. All right. Jiraiya tried to get Naruto back on topic, but was ignored, so he repeated it, and thankfully Naruto listened this time. Okay, I know you're excited to meet him once more, but focus on the present, brat. I shall be teaching you one of your father's signature techniques, the Rasengan. I shall also be watching over you while you and Care train in using her chakra, Jiraiya said, ignoring Naruto's shouts at being called a brat. He then passed him a bunch of balloons, confusing Naruto. Let's get started. 2 weeks later. Jiraiya had to say it. Naruto was a prodigy of the likes that he had never seen before. The brat had managed to get Rasengan down almost in the space of a week, and was now able to do it one-handed, and he hadn't even used Kage Bunshin until after he had formed it on his own 25 times in a row. He had moved on to training Yamato a week ago, and the two had combined notes on various jutsus they could use or invent with Mokuton, and from what Hiruzen said when he had watched a training session between the two was that Naruto's skills with Mokuton, although nowhere near that of the Shodame, was rapidly approaching that sort of level. Since then he had been focusing on his ice release as well, and had come to the conclusion that he should be able to learn sand release, as it should be a mixture of wind and earth chakra, and had started to try and activate that as well. At the moment the two of them, accompanied by Yamato, were heading towards the meeting point that the Hokage had arranged for them to meet Itachi and Kisame, who they had learned was Itachi's partner in Akatsuki. There they were to stay with Naruto, as although they knew that Itachi could be trusted, they weren't too sure about Kisame. At the same time Orochimaru would be meeting with Jiraiya, trading information with him from his spy network. Naruto reflected on his mission while he was walking alongside Jiraiya and Yamato and Ai-san. There was only one occasion where he had had to step in and stop Gaia causing damage to Konoha Shinobi, as she spent most of the time in the Suna team's rooms, or simply didn't bother with killing those around her. According to the clone he had had following her, that one time she was almost forced to try and kill Lee in his hospital bed. Flashback. Clone Naruto tailed Gaia as she walked through Konoha streets alone, heading west, towards either the academy or the hospital, for reasons that the clone was unable to identify, but due to the stiff posture of his target, he assumed it wasn't good. Naruto looked up from his hand when he felt his clone dispel, absorbing the information quickly before calling to Erosenin and rushing off, knowing that he would have to move quickly in order to reach Gaia before she disappeared. Sun shining to the center of the village, Naruto expanded his sensor range towards to the general location that his clone had been in, focusing on finding Gaia's chakra. It seems that she is moving towards the hospital. What is there for her? Perhaps she needs to take medication. Then again Lee is there. Oh shit! Lee! Naruto thought, speeding straight to the hospital over the rooftops. Naruto crashed through the window as Gaia was about to take the stopper out of her gourd, stopping her motions and accidentally distracting her long enough for Shikamaru, who had just walked in the door, to catch her in his shadow possession jutsu. What are you two doing? Gaia asked, her voice full of anger. Stopping you from killing an unarmed and injured shinobi, Shikamaru said from behind her. But he is a failure, why would you protect him? Gaia asked, having been brought up told that only the best deserve to live. If you try and cause injury or harm to any Konoha shinobi, then I will detain you or, if necessary, kill you, Naruto said, eyes promising that he would hold himself to that statement. Gaia just cocked her head curiously before casually breaking out of Shikamaru's jutsu and walking out of the room. Naruto just sighed before creating a Kage Bunshin to trail her once more, and Shun shining back to training ground 43. End flashback. Naruto was thankful that Gaia had not pressed the issue and forced him to fight, as it would have caused destruction and injuries to many that were in the building. Ida and Ai-san, Naruto shouted as he caught sight of the elder Uchiha, causing sniggers to erupt from Kisame, Orochimaru, and Jiraiya. Ha! The Uchiha prodigy, a fierce missing mean and feared S-rank called Ida and Ai-san. Kisame laughed mentally. He would never let Itachi hear the end of this. Itachi sighed, knowing that it was going to be worse if they stayed on the topic of Naruto's nicknames, and asked Naruto about how his progress in the Chunin exams was going. So Naruto explained about the first 2 exams and then the preliminaries, disturbing Itachi and Kisame when he mentioned the insanity of the Ichibi Jinchuriki. This may have to be reported to Yakuga, Kisame thought, eyes narrowing slightly. Itachi, in response, told him of the various members of Akatsuki, but whenever Jiraiya asked of their location, he immediately steered away from answering the question. In truth, Naruto and Itachi didn't have much to talk about, having exchanged mail ever since he left via Itachi's summons, and so Kisame and Naruto decided that they would have a low-level Kenjutsu spar to pass the time, as Jiraiya and Orochimaru hadn't even started to exchange information. After the first few minutes of watching the two fling their weight at one another, both Sannin departed to exchange it, leaving Itachi and Yamato to watch over the two Kenjutsu masters. With the Sannin. Alright, Jiraiya, this is critical information, but I believe that recently someone high up in Odo has been going behind my back. I know that it has something to do with the Chunin exam finals and Suna along with rumors or Root being involved, so the logical conclusion is that of invasion. I am proposing that we prepare for this, but let it happen, as it will allow us to unearth the traitor while also dealing a critical blow to their forces and perhaps Root. Orochimaru said after they had exchanged cursory information on Kurii. Are you saying what I think you're saying? Jiraiya said, knowing that the Sandaime had to know of this information ASAP. Yes, it means that if there is an upcoming war, Konoha will be attacked by 3 different shinobi organizations, Orochimaru said as he looked across the land outside of the village. Shit, this could be the start of the 4th shinobi war, Jiraiya said, shaking his head. Yeah, anyway we should get back to the others. I'll try and figure out what the traitor is trying to do, but I may not be able to, Orochimaru said. But it will be interesting watching Itachi train Naruto in his Sharingan. With Naruto, Itachi, Kisame, and Yamato. Meanwhile, as the two Sannin talked, Naruto was having the time of his life. He was facing a strong Kenjutsu master, with an oddly sentient and flexible sword. It was a very interesting challenge, and he immediately brought out his ninjados, knowing that Kisame was often regarded as the strongest of the former 7 swordsmen of the mist. And although he had the advantage in speed, running circles around Kisame, the fact that Samahata could bend and react in time was pissing him off, and so he was stuck constantly attacking. He couldn't get past Samahata, but he was so fast that Kisame couldn't attack him, so it became a battle of endurance, who could last longer under the pressure before they made a mistake. Itachi, seeing that the 2 sword masters were getting nowhere, eventually intervened, calling a stop to the spar before Naruto tired himself out too much for their training. Alright, that's enough you two. Naruto needs enough energy to spar, Itachi said, stopping the two. They stopped for a short break before Itachi and Naruto began training, during which the two Sannin returned. They relaxed for a while before Naruto and Itachi stood and walked a few meters away. Itachi then turned to Naruto and activated his Mangekyo Sharingan. Tsukunomi. The next thing Naruto knew, he was in what seemed to be a different reality. A red sky and red moon, and the colors of the surroundings seemed to be inverted from what they normally should be. And then there was the small matter that he was chained to a cross, unable to move his legs or arms. Before he could say anything, Itachi appeared in front of him. Naruto, I am sorry, was all he said before he faded from Naruto's vision. Before Naruto could say anything, he faded from the world of Tsukunomi himself. He began screaming as his mind was assaulted by images of himself killing those he cared about. Killing Ino, Sai, Tsunade, Jiraiya, Hiruzen, Anko, Yujito, and all the other friends he had made throughout his life. His sanity lasted through him killing his friends, so Itachi, who was watching him from outside in the Tsukunomi, was forced to make him go through it once more. This time each killing more grotesque than the last. It was when he was going through killing Kanako for the 3rd time that he finally snapped, and Itachi saw that he had activated his Mangekyo Sharingan. Itachi immediately stopped the Genjutsu torture, bringing Naruto back out of the nightmares, and hugged him as he began weeping. Naruto, feeling Itachi hugging him, immediately backed off. What? You're not dead? Is this another way for the nightmares to trick me? Naruto asked, muttering the last part. No, this is the real me, and I apologize for what I just put you through, but it was necessary to activate your Mangekyo Sharingan. I beg for your forgiveness for forcing this upon you, Itachi said, knowing how hurt Naruto must be. He had put images in his mind of him killing what he considered as his family, and although it was necessary, his sanity might never fully recover. It was why he never forced Sasuke through the same thing to make him stronger. There was no telling how he might react, and the fact that he was treated as if he was a prince didn't help either. Itachi just held Naruto as he cried. No one apart from his siblings and Sai knew, but his greatest fear was not being able to save members of his surrogate family, or accidentally doing something to cause their deaths. Naruto eventually came to the conclusion that it wasn't real, locking away the memories of the Genjutsu into a tightly sealed corner of his mind, where he vowed to never again visit. You said that it was necessary to unlock the Mangekyo Sharingan, right? Naruto asked tentatively after he had finished crying. Yes, which means that you have now accomplished something which very few Uchihas have ever achieved, Itachi said. So does it look like yours? Or is it something different? Naruto asked, a gleam of excitement now in his eyes. Well, yours looks very different from what many would consider normal, as the majority of them seem to be a repeated pattern around a particular point, like the pupil, but that may be to the fact that you are related to all three branches of the Rikudo Sennin. It seems to be in two concentric circles, the first containing a pattern of black flames, and the inner circle containing a pattern of two diamonds, one vertical and one horizontal, and both focused on the pupil, Itachi said, struck by the vividness of Naruto's Mangekyo. Naruto gained a rather accurate description from Itachi's words and had reached a conclusion. That sounds so cool. Yes, it seems that with each ring, as it were, the background color and primary color changes. With the outer ring of flames, that background is red, and the flames black, but in the inner circle you have a black background with red diamonds. Itachi said, unsure of what to make of the unusualness of Naruto's Mangekyo Sharingan. Oh well, I shall only bring it up if someone asks or it has unique abilities or stops Naruto from using certain abilities, Itachi thought, thinking of Shursue's Mangekyo, and how it allowed him to sway people to his will. Well, as we still have around 71.5 hours in here, what do you think about training with it? It's also a bonus, because when we train in here your eyes won't deteriorate, Itachi said, standing up. Wait, what do you mean deteriorate? Naruto asked, this being the first time he had heard of it. Such power is the offering that the Mangekyo Sharingan gives us, but there must be an equalizing price for such power, and that is that, over time and through use, we slowly lose the ability to see, Itachi sighed. Well, that sucks, Naruto pouted, but expected it. After all, there are always downsides. Of course, it can be negated by gaining the eternal Mangekyo Sharingan, Itachi mentioned as an afterthought. And how does one gain that? Naruto asked, not really sure if he actually wanted to know. Two Mangekyo users must swap their eyes, the closer the blood relation the better, but it mentioned in the Naka shrine that a substitute that could be just as good were the eyes of one that you feel emotionally close with, Itachi said, revealing his idea to Naruto. So we're going to swap eyes now that I have the Mangekyo Sharingan? Naruto asked. He liked his new eyes. Oh Kami, no, we shall wait until after the Chunin exam finals, by which time you should have gained some experience using them, Itachi said, before telling Naruto to follow him. The two of them walked deeper into Naruto's mindscape until they finally came to the area that Naruto had labeled as Kier's prison. Not that it looked much like a prison anymore. There was simply a large mansion on a hill, surrounded by lakes and grasslands, and both Kushina and Kier were able to move freely through Naruto's mindscape. The prison was now on Kier, in the form of a seal on her back, so she could now interact with her mindscape surroundings. The knowledge that she had gained as a bijou, she had organized into tomes for Kushina and Naruto to read if they wished. Speaking of Kushina, she didn't look too happy. Itachi, you complete and utter imbecile. What the hell do you think you were doing? Kushina roared as she stalked over to Itachi and Naruto angrily before beginning to beat the crap out of the older Uchiha. This went on for a while before Naruto, who was beginning to fear for his Ni-Isan's life, managed to calm her down. Ka-chan, he was just trying to help me prepare for the path ahead. Naruto started. Don't even get me started on his reasons for doing that to you. He almost cost you your sanity. Kushina seemed to have worked herself up. Could you let me go now, Kushina-senpai? Itachi asked quietly from one side. He knew that quiet would work. Well, it had with his mother Mikoto anyway. Fine, but next time you do something as idiotic as what you just did, you'd better warn me first or you will not live to tell the tale, Kushina threatened before walking off angrily. Well, that went well, Naruto said sarcastically as she walked away. Outside in the real world. All of the others watched interestedly as Itachi and Naruto both fell into a trance for a second. Then Naruto collapsed to the ground. Itachi then dusted himself down before picking up the sleeping Naruto. What was that about? Yamato asked, gesturing to the sleeping boy. Well, we had to activate his Mangekyo Sharingan, and then proceeded to train in it for 72 hours straight as it doesn't deteriorate his eyesight while in Tsukunomi, Itachi said, shocking the others. He then turned to Jiraiya and handed him a sealed note. This contains a report on what abilities Naruto gained from the Mangekyo, and how strong they are. Only the Hokage is to see this. If anyone else does, apart from Kanako, then I will be after your head, Itachi said, scaring the shit out of the man in front of him. I need to get my hands on that info, but I won't be able to do it now, Kisame thought, eyeing the note out of the corner of his eye. Orochimaru began talking with Itachi about the appearance of Naruto's Mangekyo. He found the different appearances in the Mangekyo Sharingan to be fascinating. After all, why would they change? It was mystifying. Thankfully, Itachi was used to this kind of behavior from the snake Sannin, or he would have thought he was trying to gain information that he shouldn't have. At the Hokage's tower 1.5 hours later. Hiruzen was shocked as he read over Itachi's report to him while Naruto, Yamato, and Jiraiya waited for him to finish. Hokage-sama. These are the results of Naruto awakening his Mangekyo Sharingan. 1. Fire affinity, though not as strong as his other ones. 2. Increased chakra control. 3. Boost in intelligence and strategic thinking may rival that of Shikaku. 4. Ability to use Amaterasu unprecedented control over flames. 5. Ability to use a fusion of Tsukunomi and Shursue's Kodo Amatsukami, able to both torture and persuade, able to control someone to kill another person while they are still in Tsukunomi, like a puppet. 6. Has an unprecedented Susanoo that has the form of an orb of ghostly flames, able to create arms of flames that can attack on their own or form weapons to attack on command. Thus, this makes Naruto's Mangekyo Sharingan abilities unique, even among those that have achieved the Mangekyo Sharingan, and if he masters these abilities, then he would beat any other Mangekyo-bearing Uchiha, perhaps even Madara if he were still alive. Uchiha Itachi, Shinobi of Konohagakure. Hiruzen put the note down slowly in shock. Naruto just never stopped surprising everyone. If he had gained a fire affinity, then the chakra natures he had were almost innumerable. He might be able to combine it into lava release and boil release at least. In fact, he might just be able to achieve every single chakra nature. Hiruzen sighed again. Naruto, after the three of you leave, I want you to train your newly gained fire affinity, as I know that you don't know many jutsu for that, and it is pretty weak. I also want you to try and determine if you can combine it into other chakra natures. If you can't, then it doesn't really matter, Hiruzen said, before motioning for them to leave quietly. The three shinobi walked out, determined and eager to try the new abilities granted to Naruto. With Kanako, Haku, Kurino, and Sakura. Kanako smiled slightly as she watched Haku, Kurino, and Sakura train in kunai, balancing along with Kurinai, who had been getting rather bored with nothing to do. All three had become very good with chakra control, with Haku and Sakura training in medical ninjutsu, and Sakura and Kurino training in genjutsu. All three had been training in their chakra natures, with Sakura being a fire nature and Kurino being a water nature, but only Haku really focused on it, the others focusing on their specific fields more. Sakura's hair had darkened slightly from what it was before, and was now shoulder length. She was now wearing a dark gray vest with her dress becoming a dark blue. She had medical bandages wrapped around her left bicep, and wore a medical kit on her right hip. She also had a tanto strapped to her lower back, ready to draw, and had black fingerless gloves with metal plates on the back. All right, you three, it's time for you to go for another lap, Kanako called, causing the trio to set their kunai before sprinting off. They would run out of the training ground before running round the block of the nearest 5 training grounds. All in all, it was about 12 kilometers. Well, if they were an actual team, they would be very good. Kurino would do support, Haku would have to take close, even though he wouldn't like it, and Sakura can do both close and support with her medical ninjutsu and recreation of Tsunade's strength, Kurinai remarked. Yes, although they are more of a support or skirmisher team than frontline combat, Kanako said. They don't have the close combat focus necessary like the actual Team 7, Kurinai agreed, thinking of Team 7's focus on ninjutsu, kenjutsu, and taijutsu. To be honest, I am actually thinking of listing that team as a first response team. They cover all the various shinobi disciplines, work well together, and can adapt to almost any situation because of it, Kanako said, not sure if it was the right decision. They are well equipped for it, but are they ready? Because if they aren't, they'll end up dead. Naruto there or not, Kurinai cautioned. With Ino. Ino swore loudly as she dodged a set of kunai, forcing her to move back in range of Yugao's katana within the small forest clearing in Training Ground 7. If she didn't manage to put some range in between her and Yugao, then she was going to lose the spar again. Yugao definitely held the upper hand in their clashes due to her experience and the greater reach offered by her sword compared to Ino's Chikudo. Add to that the fact that Anko was out there somewhere hurting her back to the aforementioned Kenjutsu master, and it was almost impossible for her to escape from the two of them in order to complete her current exercise, and she only had half an hour left on the clock. Ino deflected Yugao's downward strike before kicking her away and shining out of the clearing, feeling a bit apprehensive. That opening to Yugao-sensei's attack was a little too obvious. Am I walking into a trap? Ino quickly and silently approached the area where her package should be, assessing the situation, before realizing that no matter which way she approached the damn thing, she would have to deal with a whole load of traps that she didn't have time for. Considering the problem, she never noticed Anko dangling from the branch above her and slowly reaching down with a kunai. Well, I could try and drop in from above, but… oh shit! Ino thought before she felt the cold metal of a kunai touch her neck. Do you give up, girly? Anko's voice sounded in her ear. Yes, Ino huffed, annoyed that she had lost again. Well, you did better this time, Anko started as Yugao jumped down beside her. You avoided capture for quite some time and led us on a merry chase, and if you had had teammates, then you definitely would have completed the exercise. So you did reasonably well with the resources you had, Anko said, grinning at the look of surprise on Ino's face. And your kenjutsu should be up to scratch for the event, especially as you will be working with a team, Yugao commented. But for the past 2 weeks you've been saying that I was pathetic, Ino retorted. Ah, but we were comparing you to us, which isn't exactly fair, in order to get you to keep working hard. In reality, you're probably the 4th or 5th most capable person in the exams. Yugao shrugged. Anyway, the next week will be your own time to practice, so we won't be here anymore, and you should receive the match lineup tonight, so make sure to do us proud, girly, Anko said, before she and Yugao shunshined away. With Sai. Sai winced as he blocked another of Guy's punches. The man was a taijutsu powerhouse, and he already had bruises on the majority of his arms. Hayate watched from one side as Guy blurred before reappearing, throwing Sai by his leg into a nearby tree. Remember that the style you are meant to be using is very lithe and fast, dancing around their attacks before attacking yourself. Guy instructed seriously as Sai stood up from the collision. Guy was always very serious when he was instructing a person in taijutsu, as it was his forte, and if they came to him, then they were serious about their training. Alright, I think that's enough taijutsu for now, Guy. Sai, take a break for 15 minutes, and then we shall get started on your kenjutsu practice for today. Hayate spoke up, and Guy immediately rushed off in the direction of the Konoha hospital to watch over his student. That evening, 5:30. Naruto, the Hokage, has asked for all senior Jounin, ANBU captains and clan heads, along with you and Sai, to attend a meeting in his office immediately. Kanako's voice pierced through the door of his apartment where he was reading at the moment. Okay, I will be there shortly, he replied, before getting up and putting on his equipment, most of which he had been using earlier that day. Naruto and his teachers had been focusing primarily on him learning fire techniques rather than combining it with his other affinities, although it was likely that it could be possible, as one of the 5 Kagebunshin he had assigned to the task had managed to get a hint of lava release. But he and about 200 Kagebunshin had spent the majority of their time training in 8 basic fire techniques to give him a good base. After the day, both Jiraiya and Yamato said that they would be unable to train Naruto further as the final week of preparation was for private training, and they had other errands to do which would occupy their time. Naruto shunshined outside of the Hokage's tower, his hood over his head, although that identified him as Konoha's deathly angel, and walked up through the tower, ignoring the friendly acclamations of ninja he didn't know. Hell, most of them just wanted to boast they had him as a friend. It was like he was a valuable possession. He greeted the secretary outside of the Hokage's office cordially. She didn't hold any grudges against him and kept his identity secret, so they were good friends, but the atmosphere at the moment seemed very tense. As he opened the door, he saw that he was among the last to arrive and settled against the back wall for the Hokage to begin speaking alongside Sai, who was doing the same. If the air outside was tense, then this was crushing. The last time something like this had been called, it was at the outbreak of the Third Shinobi War. Due to recent security measures installed in and around Konoha, we have picked up that just after the Chunin exam finals, there will be an invasion carried out by Suna, Odo, and Root Nin, the Hokage began solemnly. This has also been corroborated by Jiraiya, who has uncovered the same sort of information from the intelligence gathered by his spy network. The Hokage continued, as such, we need to plan in order to react to this threat. Hokage-sama, what do we have to play with in terms of reactive strategies? Nara Shikaku asked, not sleeping due to the importance of the meeting. I will be forwarding those to you, Sai and Uzumaki Naruto, as he was the one that designed the most recent upgrades, and the two of you shall work together in order to create the most effective strategy possible, Hiruzen said. But as of now, we are at war. You are to prepare and wait for orders. Dismissed. They filed out, each mind racing at the preparations they would have to make. While Naruto, Sai and Shikaku discussed a time for meeting tomorrow. 8:00 a.m., Hokage's office. What are you three doing here? Hiruzen asked as Shikaku, Naruto and Sai walked into his office. Well, we couldn't think of another secure place that everyone knew and could report to during the invasion, and also with you here we won't have to put the plans through all the steps, you can just say if they would work or not, Shikaku said before yawning. Hiruzen sighed. Could you please block out the next 2 hours in my timetable? He called to his secretary. He then activated a security and privacy seal that Naruto installed after hearing her affirmative. The day of the Chunin exam finals was, well, very excitable as one would expect. Merchants were up early, shouting out their wares in the hopes of gaining a profit before the event. People from all over the elemental nations were present, eager to see the strength of the genin from different villages, and there was a massive betting pool on various things. Who would go to the semifinals or finals, who would win the competition, and who would be the genin in the special event that was on the registers handed out by Chunin and the event organizers. However, the senior shinobi were more concerned for the pending invasion that would be taking place after the finals. Over the past week, the ANBU Corps in Jounin had been made aware of the situation, and they had been shoring up their weak spots. They had even been donating small amounts of chakra each day to improve the effectiveness of the detection/shield field. It was now able to stand a tailed beast bomb from the Yanbi, and although it stopped people sunshining or using seals to get in, people were able to walk through it completely fine. As such, the Konoha forces would only have to worry about ninjas running through the city on foot, allowing them to control the flow of the soon-to-be battle. Naruto, Sai and Ino gathered in front of the exam stadium an hour and a half early, and exchanged greetings. Hey Ino, Sai, Naruto called, waving at the two of them. Hello Naruto, Sai greeted, distractedly, as he was drawing. Naruto didn't bother to try and reproach him, knowing that if he was putting drawing over greeting, then it must be important. So, ready to be revealed to the world angel? Ino asked, smiling. She had made especially sure to bring a camera to catch the faces of some of the crowd. To be honest, I'm not sure. It'll be good to be able to finally reveal my status, but I don't think I am going to particularly like the respect they'll give me. I am also not looking forward to trying and explain all of it to the team, Naruto grimaced. The two of them looked over at what Sai was drawing, wondering if they could figure out why it was so important, but what they saw left them shocked. 3 angels bearing shinobi weapons? Ino asked, getting an inkling of where Sai was going. Yeah, I thought that we should have a jutsu that combines this team together. I think I shall call it Guardian Angels. Sai nodded as he drew in kunai holsters and seals on the 3 angels depicted. You know, they might start relating this team to angels. I mean, I have my wings, Ino has an angel on her trench coat, and now you have this, Naruto commented, envisioning their team being taught in the academy like the Sannin. Ino turned to Naruto. You're ready to go up against Niji first? She asked. Yeah, Naruto replied vacantly as he remembered getting the match draws after that meeting with the Hokage. Flashback. Naruto sighed as he opened the door to his apartment, ignoring the shouts of the wave children behind him. As he pushed the door inwards, he became aware of a note on the floor, having obviously been pushed under the door. He picked it up cautiously. After all, it hadn't been the first time that someone had put a bomb in the mail for him, before realizing what it was. Match listings. Uzumaki Naruto versus Hyuga Niji. Sabaku no Gaia versus Omoi. Sabaku no Kankuro versus Sai. Nara Shikamaru versus Sabaku no Temari. Yamanaka Ino versus Samui. Aburame Shino versus Ni Yujito. This is round 1, a free-for-all tournament. However, round 2 will be team against team comprising of Konoha Team 7, the Suna team and Kumo team in one battle. Naruto nodded. It seemed that he would be going up against the Hyuga prodigy straight up, and then his second match would most likely be against Gaia unless Omoi manages to pull something out of the hat. Naruto, believe it or not, liked his lineup simply for the first 2 matches alone. His first would be a chance to show his true strength to Konoha, and his second would allow him to get close to Gaia and see what is happening with Shikaku, as he should be able to restrain her with Mokuton if necessary. After the first 2 matches, he knew that he would have strong opponents as they were able to get this far, and the secondary round sounded very interesting. It meant that a team had to be able to hold off 2 other teams at the same time and come out on top. And then after that I will have the special event, Naruto thought grimly, as he hadn't not been told anything of the requirements or his opponents. Flashback end. The question is, will we be able to qualify for the second round? Will anyone? Naruto asked quietly as the three of them moved into the competitor's box and picking their seats, being the first to arrive. Well, due to my lineup, I have no reason not to, but it is you two that have the tough jobs, Sai commented, not looking up from his drawing. Yes, I have tough opponents in the form of Samui and Yujito, and then you and Naruto if I make it that far, while Naruto's problem is going to be maintaining his chakra amount, as Gaia has the same sort of stubbornness that he does, Ino said. Hey! Naruto couldn't help but whine. And we have the invasion afterwards as well, Sai said, stopping his brush as the other competitors began to file into the box. In the Kage box. Ah, Reikage Dano, Kazekage Dano, I am glad that you could make it, Hiruzen said as he stood and shook hands with the leaders of two others of the 5 great shinobi nations. Well, I couldn't not attend, especially since all 3 of my genin are in the final, and they were trained by my brother. Perhaps he should spend his time training genin when he's in Kumo rather than coming up with stupid raps. The Reikage, I said, causing B, who was his bodyguard along with Darui, to start shouting about not dissing on raps. Indeed, it shall be interesting to see how my genin are against those of other villages, although I have heard that you have Konoha's deathly angel in the exams, the Kazekage said from behind his face mask. He was very interested to see if Gaia had become an effective weapon, but even if she hadn't, then she would still wreak havoc upon Konoha, allowing Suna to regain its funding. Yes, well, he is actually still a genin. He did those missions while in the academy due to certain circumstances, and I suspect that he shall have several surprises in store for us. It shall be a very exciting tournament, Hiruzen said, almost laughing at the thought of the faces of the other 2 Kage. Most of the spectators had taken their seats, among them the injured Lee and Sasuke, who had recently began his rehabilitation after several months under the care of Tsunade. As he took his seat with the other rookies who didn't make it to the finals, he was deeply surprised when Sakura did not start to fawn over him. He didn't know what had changed, and frankly he didn't really care either. They were finally off his back. But he glared down at the competitor's box when he saw all 3 of his should-be team members down there, although it did take a while for him to identify Ino, who seemed to have finally gotten over him. Why does the Dobe have so much power? I deserve that power as the last Uchiha, he thought bitterly, remembering the pure strength of Naruto's punches vividly. Hiruzen stood and made his way to the lectern in front of the Kage box. Let the Chunin exam finals begin, and the crowd roared in approval. With Genma Shiranui, Genma muttered as he walked up to the competitor's box to organize the genin and make sure they were aware of the match order. He walked through the door. All right, you should be aware that the first round is the free-for-all tournament. There is no exceptions to fighting teammates unless you forfeit. The secondary round will be a team battle between Konoha Team 7, the Sand Siblings, and Kumo Team 3. You will face off against the other 2 teams at the same time, so I suggest that in between battles of round 1 you try and come up with a strategy. The special event at the end will pit Uzumaki Naruto against Konoha specialist in Kenjutsu, Ninjutsu, and Taijutsu, but also against all of you at the end, Genma announced, shocking the hell out of Naruto and the others. Shit, that means I'm gonna have to try and conserve as much chakra as possible, but thankfully I brought chakra pills, so I should be able to give a moderately good show against Niji rather than just speed behind him and knock him out, Naruto thought, relieved at his wariness. Anyway, the first match is Uzumaki Naruto versus Hyuga Niji, so if those 2 could descend into the arena and wait as I write up the other matches on the board here so people can be ready to go as I call their matches, Genma said, writing up the match list. Niji and Naruto rose calmly from their seats before walking down the stairs to the arena, both deep in thought. This will be a tough battle for me to win, as I have never won against Naruto before, and he knows my fighting style. In fact, I may have to pull out my trump cards early to just get through, but even if I do, then I would have to face Gaia, who is just as dangerous, Niji thought, aware that it was unlikely he would win. Well, to put on a good show I would need to face Niji using only taijutsu, but that would demean him unnecessarily, and could also bore the crowd as only taijutsu masters like Guy, Lee, or the Kage would be able to see me, so I should try and use a mix. It will be interesting to see what he has learnt over the month break. Naruto thought, face completely blank, showing no emotion. The 2 of them walked into the arena and spaced themselves, 20 paces in between the 2 of them, both emotionless as the crowd psyched itself up. All of the genin watching felt as if there was a sort of peace in the arena that, with the slightest movement, would shatter, as the 2 down in the arena made no movement. They just watched each other, everything else fading out of concentration as neither showed the slightest hint of doubt or backing down. Man, I like the look of these 2 already. It takes a lot to stare unblinkingly towards the certain pain that is to come, said as he leaned forward in his seat, eager to see the match. I get the feeling that this will primarily be a taijutsu battle between the two, and I'm not certain who will take the most hits, but I suspect that it will be the Hyuga, Hiruzen commented as he watched the two. But it is almost suicidal to face a Hyuga in taijutsu. They are almost built for it with their Byakugan and gentle fist combination, the Kazekage refuted. Genma looked on anxiously from his position in between the two prodigies, before bringing his arm up. Hajime, he shouted before jumping out of the arena in case the start of the match was explosive. The crowd quieted as they didn't move, and the tension began to rack up slowly. Niji activated his Byakugan, knowing that he needed it now more than ever. He was going up against someone who could match his sensei Guy, a taijutsu master, in speed and strength, if not surpass him. Indeed, Guy spoke often of Naruto, and Niji and his team had witnessed a spar between the two once. Flashback. Niji, Tenten and Lee watched quietly as Guy and Naruto took off their weights and leaped back into their spar. Niji had activated his Byakugan back at the very start of the fight to just keep track of the two, but now they were just after images and blurs, and all they could see was the dust being flung into the air and craters and trees collapsing from the strikes of the two. End flashback. Naruto ever so slowly set himself into the opening stance of his personal taijutsu style, Fists of the Hurricane, never taking his eyes off Niji as he did so. They stayed like that for a few more minutes, the crowd growing ever more restless, before Naruto, in a flash, brought his fist up and smashed into the ground, causing a massive crater to develop and a huge cloud of dust to be thrown up. The crowd, especially the civilians, were shocked at the feat reminiscent of Tsunade's strength. But when the dust settled, not many of the shinobi were surprised to see that Naruto was nowhere in sight. Man, Naruto is going fast, Kanako spoke as she watched the battle with her Sharingan. Where is he, Kanako? Anko asked, turning to the non-Uchiha Sharingan bearer. He is using pure speed to maintain his position on the wall. He is literally running on the wall of the arena without using chakra. Just speed, Kanako answered, causing those nearby to start muttering. Only Naruto would be able to do that, Anko replied, smiling at Naruto's ever-growing abilities. Naruto ran, and after he had gained enough speed, jumped off the wall and launched himself at Niji at such speeds that his eyes couldn't follow. He kicked Niji in the back, launching him into the wall opposite the two of them. The resultant dust cloud obscured the vision of all watching, but it revealed Niji standing in a dome-like hole in the arena wall. You truly are a genius, Niji, to be able to use the Kaiten, even though it is a main house technique, and to use it in such a way, Naruto commented as he watched Niji walk towards him. Why haven't you finished this match yet? We both know that you are more than capable of doing so. After all, fate is with you today, Niji asked, feeling slightly put off. You need to stop with the fate crap, Niji. Let me put it this way, if someone without the help of fate trained until they dropped, they would win against someone with fate on their side. Can be seen in you, after all you trained like mad when you were younger to get where you are today. But if you didn't, you wouldn't be here. It was your decision to train, therefore fate has no say in your life, Naruto said, watching Niji for his reaction. It is my fate to forever be a servant to the main house. I have no choice, due to my cagebird seal, Niji said. So you resign yourself to it without searching for a way out? Naruto asked, studying his nails. There is no way out. Do you think we like being slaves? Niji shouted, beginning to give into his rage. In Fuinjutsu, there is a counter to everything, one just has to find it, I would know, being the best sealing master in the elemental nations. Fuinjutsu is like a language, one has to find the proper combination, Naruto said, looking at Niji once more. Niji didn't respond, just glared at Naruto, who sighed before setting himself into his stance once more. Niji charged, despite knowing that he would lose if he did so. It was better than losing with attacking at least once. You are in range of my field of divination. 8 trigrams, 64 palms. Niji spoke, shocking the members of the Hyuga clan. To think that he would be able to perform both Kaiten and 8 trigrams, 64 palms, he has unrivaled potential in the clan. Such a genius is wasted in the branch family. Hayashi, Hinata's father and Hyuga clan head thought, thinking of how proud his brother would be. Behind him the Hyuga council was conferring, wondering if Niji had stolen such techniques from the main house. Down in the arena Naruto was dodging the first of Niji's strikes, but as he went higher in terms of number of strikes, he started to speed up, hitting a scattering of Naruto's tenkatsu, causing Naruto to collapse. The sheer pain he was feeling at having several of his tenkatsu forcibly closed was immense, but he had felt a lot worse in his childhood, so he had very few impairments caused by the pain. Niji's eyes widened as he turned when he heard Naruto getting back up, having turned away and told the proctor that the match was over after Naruto had fallen. How? The pain alone should render you almost unconscious, Niji asked as Naruto stood up. I have been hurt a lot worse before, believe me, along with the fact that you sealing my chakra points does almost nothing, as my muscles can operate fully without chakra, and I can just reopen them, Naruto shrugged. What do you mean reopen them? That's not possible. Niji was getting more confused by the second, but he knew that if Naruto could do what he said, then he had no way to win this match. Like this, was all Naruto said before red chakra covered his body and reopened his closed tenketsu. To those who could sense chakra or had the Byakugan or Sharingan, it seemed as if Naruto's chakra exploded to well above what seemed possible, and it was already above Kage level before. There was a mix of blue, black, and red flames of chakra coming off him, which intrigued most shinobi. Blue chakra was normal, the red they were confused by, as red chakra was Kyuubi's chakra, but they felt no malice from it, and only Hiruzen, Jiraiya, Yamato, and Kanako knew what the correlation to the black flames were. Naruto grinned before the chakra died down to its normal level once more before he disappeared, reappearing behind the Hyuga, who was temporarily blinded due to the chakra and knocking him out. Shousa Uzumaki Naruto, Genma shouted, leaving the audience stunned into quiet before several people, many of them jounins, started to clap and cheer for Naruto, having heard of his abilities and bet on him to win. Needless to say, many civilians lost a lot of money due to Naruto winning, so they weren't in the mood to congratulate him right now. Naruto grabbed the unconscious Hyuga before he shunshined in front Hyuga Hayashi, and set Niji on a seat next to Hinata before turning and whispering into Hayashi's ear. It might be time that you told him the truth of that night, Hayashi-sama. Also, if you want your clan to be free from the prison that your council has built, there is a slip of paper inside the top right pocket of his vest. Naruto shunshined away before the clan head could reply. Gaia versus Omoi. The next match is Sabaku no Gaia versus Omoi of Kumo, Genma announced as the crowd was discussing the first match, wanting to get this show on the road. Gaia arrived in a sand shunshin, spraying the leftover sand everywhere, while Omoi appeared in a lightning shunshin. The two sized each other up, with Omoi just showing a hint of strain, knowing that Gaia wouldn't hesitate to kill him if she wanted. Then his eyes hardened. He wasn't going to make this easy for the female Jinchuriki. The key to being able to make this a fair match is speed, which is why I worked on that primarily over the month. The question is, will it be enough? Omoi thought, as he withdrew his katana. Everyone looked on as he channeled lightning chakra into the blade, causing a field of lightning to appear around it. Hajime! Gaia immediately went on the offensive, as waves of sand sped towards the Kumogenin, who was forced to cut his way through the sand with his katana in order to not be captured by the sand and crushed. Omoi, as soon as he could, withdrew and began a ninjutsu combination. Lightning style. Lightning surge. A wave of lightning issued forth from Omoi along the ground, splintering and cracking it, and crashing into the wave of Gaia's sand, immobilizing it and continuing on towards Gaia, but dissipated before it could reach her. But Omoi had channeled lightning into his recently redrawn katana and gone after the wave of lightning, reaching Gaia without having to dodge her sand defenses. He brought the katana down on her sand defenses and broke through her sand shield, surprising Gaia, who managed to move just in time before shunshining away from Omoi, wary now of his lightning techniques which seemed to break through her defenses with ease. She attacked with the sand that was behind him, catching him off guard and smashing his left leg. With her opponent unable to escape, she sent a wave of sand to crush Omoi, but as the wave came down on top of him, she didn't see Naruto zoom underneath with his hood up. The sand crashed down and tried to crush the genin but failed, so she drew it back for a second go, revealing a shield of blue chakra that surrounded Omoi and another shinobi like a bubble, extending from two wings of chakra that sprouted from the unknown shinobi's back. That was unnecessary, the shinobi commented before picking up Omoi and carrying him over to the medics that had rushed onto the field. Shousa Sabaku no Gaia. The announcement didn't surprise too many people, but they admired Omoi's determination to fight even though he knew he was outmatched. Sabaku no Kankuro versus Sai. Proctor. I forfeit, Kankuro shouted from the competitor's box, unwilling to fight before the invasion, although he would have to fight in the second round and special event. What? Afraid of having the crap beaten out of you? Ino asked Kankuro while Sai sat back down with a huff, bored out of his mind. Take that back, girlie. Kankuro shouted, face red with anger. I will once you fight Sai, Ino said, smirking. Ah, fine. Proctor, I withdraw my forfeit, Kankuro shouted before he turned back to the Jinning Ino and Sai. Well, I suppose I can ignore the fact that to forfeit is irrevocable, as he revoked his forfeiture around 30 seconds after he made the initial decision, Genma muttered, thankful that he had hesitated in calling the next match. Up in the stands, Kankuro got the feeling that he was not going to enjoy this match, as he glanced at Sai and saw an icy cold smile on his face. The two of them stood across from one another, although Kankuro had revealed his puppet Crow, causing a stir amongst the spectators. It had been a long time since they had seen a Suna puppet user fight in a Chunin exam finals. As this seems to be a battle of puppets, I request permission to unseal my own equivalent, Sai said, shocking the Suna shinobi watching. That's a bluff. Only Suna knows the puppet techniques and construction, Kankuro shouted. That's why I said my equivalent. It's not a true puppet in the technical sense, Sai replied in a bored tone. Can you bring it out in the middle of battle? Genma asked, interrupting their argument. Yes, Sai replied, having already learned the answer from his question. Well, then you can do it then, Genma ordered before bringing his arm up. Hajime! Kankuro immediately sent his puppet after Sai, remembering the lightning panther from the preliminaries, and concluded that this puppet equivalent he was speaking of was probably even more annoying to deal with. Sai flipped end over end, dodging the senbons launched by Crow neatly before backing off and hurriedly adding chakra to several of his drawings to buy him time. A pair of wolves burst forth, forcing Kankuro to withdraw his puppet in order to defend himself of risk losing the match or his life. Sai quickly drew back as well, knowing that the faster he did this, the more he could avoid having to dodge the attacks of Kankuro's puppet. Sai hurriedly drew a few additions to his drawing that would allow it to better combat the machination of wood and metal before calling out his technique. Ink style, Guardian Angel. Everyone leaned forward, none having seen it before, to see an angel of ink that was 2 times the size of a man and bearing a huge zanbatu in his right hand. His wings fluttered slightly before his head moved smoothly towards Sai and queried. Orders. The bland, dull tone caused Kankuro to shiver as he beheld the huge monstrosity before him. Force him to surrender, if necessary destroy the puppet, Sai said as he indicated towards Kankuro, who was busy trying to come up with a plan. The Colossus nodded in assent before he started to thunder towards the puppet and its master. Holy shit! Kankuro cursed as he barely managed to dodge out of the way in time to avoid being struck with the flat of the massive zanbatu. Up in the stands, many of the shinobi were talking of Sai's replication of puppets through different techniques. Now that Sai has brought out such a monstrosity, Kankuro will be forced on the defensive, and will be more focused on that ink construct than Sai himself, Naruto said to the other competitors as they watched the match. Yes, well, the kid is an A-rank shinobi, so Kankuro knew it was unlikely he would win, Temari said outwardly, but was inwardly very worried as Kankuro was forced to duck under the massive ink blade. What the hell have you been teaching your genin Kanako? Asuma asked in surprise as the jounin watched the match. Well, Sai has always been able to manipulate ink like so, but this is actually less complicated to do than the lightning ink panther he set loose in the prelims. It just takes more time to draw is all, along with a lot more chakra, but none of it is elemental chakra, so it's pretty easy, relatively speaking, Kanako said, not turning to face the Sarutobi. Wait, you said he was always able to do this? Asuma asked, eyes widening in shock and curiosity. Yeah, most of our training was focused on Ino, which is why she's almost low jounin level in some areas, Kanako said, surprising the man further. Kankuro sighed as he finally got a breather from constantly dodging, having finally managed to connect his chakra strings to Crow and good now managed to have it annoy the monstrosity across from him. Scanning for Sai hurriedly, his thoughts froze when he realized that he couldn't see him. All of a sudden there was a flash of metal in front of him, and Kankuro felt his chakra strings be cut, stopping his connection with Crow, before he saw Sai in front of him with his tanto held at his throat. When? How? Kankuro asked, staggered at the speed of Sai's movements. Well, I shunshined almost immediately after you stopped moving, and waited as you came to the realization that there was only a few places I could be. As for how I was able to cut your chakra strings, my tanto is made of chakra metal, and has a number of seals on it that allow it to disrupt chakra on contact, Sai said conversationally before the proctor called the match in his favor. Oh, and I spared your puppet as it was a creation of yours, and creations should be respected when they fit their purpose, though I wouldn't rely on them so much if I were you, Sai said, showing that the ink angel was gone. Thanks, Kankuro said grudgingly as he walked over to his puppet. Never really did like the idea of puppets. They remind me too much of dolls, Sai said to himself before he shunshined back to the competitor's box. Nara Shikamaru versus Sabaku no Temari. Shikamaru was considering forfeiting his match. It was really too troublesome to go out and fight a girl in front of a huge crowd. Then again, if I do forfeit, my mother, Sakura and Ino would never let me hear the end of it, and that may be even more troublesome, he thought regrettably. Ino, as if she had heard his thoughts, shook her head before walking over to where he was standing at the railing. Shikamaru, you aren't thinking of forfeiting this match before you even got down there, are you? She asked in a sweet tone, too sweet. Shikamaru paled. No, he said before he could stop himself. Ino smiled. Good, she said briefly before grabbing the back of his shirt and throwing him over the railing and into the arena while all the other competitors watched, most with amusement. Ino, was that really necessary? Naruto asked as he walked over to the railing and looked down, seeing that Shikamaru had stabbed a pair of kunai into the wall to slow his descent. Yes, Ino replied unabashedly, causing Naruto to facepalm. Temari watched in annoyance as the Konoha genin refused to come down when their match was called, although this transformed into amusement when she witnessed Ino throwing him over the edge. Shikamaru walked over to the center of the arena, head down in sheer laziness. Why do I have to fight a girl? It's so troublesome, Shikamaru moaned quietly, but it still managed to reach the ears of Temari. What the hell was that? Temari asked rhetorically, already determined to give this guy a beating. Hajime! Genma couldn't stop the sweat drop as he leapt away from the two. All Naras seemed to have inherent laziness. Temari immediately brought out her fan and began throwing wind jutsus at Shikamaru, full of feminine fury, forcing Shikamaru to try and dodge. Shikamaru, knowing that he had to retreat, distracted the Sunakunoichi by throwing several kunai and paper bombs at her, before fleeing to the shelter of the nearby group of trees. Get out here, you coward! Temari roared angrily as she sent more wind jutsus after him, buffeting the trees this way and that. Shikamaru didn't reply, sighing at Temari's ferocity. Why are women so damn troublesome? In fact, why am I even bothering with this fight at all? Oh yeah, that's right, Ino, he thought before going into what Asuma liked to call his thinking position. Oh, finally, he's actually getting serious, Asuma said, leaning back and rolling his eyes while the other jounin looked at him curiously. What do you mean, Asuma? Kurenai asked. Kurenai was the one amongst the three ice queens of Konoha that was most able to deal with the Sarutobi, as Kanako and Anko were frosty towards him at best. That position he's in shows that he is actually focusing on the match rather than whining about it, Asuma said, bringing a lighter up to the new cigarette that he had just placed between his teeth. All of the others, excepting Guy, who was watching the match intently and didn't notice, moved back hurriedly as he breathed in deeply before the smoke came out of his mouth. Well, he is a Nara, so it should prove interesting to see how he adapts, Kanako said, turning back to the match after she and the other nearby females had given Asuma a death stare. Shikamaru meanwhile was rapidly going through different strategies, knocking them off if they had a small likelihood of success or were plain stupid. This left him with a list of around 40 different paths that the current situation could take. If I don't at least show that I could win this match, Mom and Ino would beat the crap out of me, but at the same time it would be really annoying to go up against Sai, who I know I can't win against in the next round, Shikamaru thought. His lips curled up at one corner briefly before he began to move. Shikamaru reappeared on one side of the stadium as Temari was taking a break from tossing wind jutsus with the sun behind him, but Temari caught onto his plan immediately. He's planning to use the sun to be able to lengthen his shadow abilities from before, she thought, remembering that she had started on that side originally. Shikamaru threw a couple of smoke bombs, causing Temari to think that he was trying to use the smoke cast to initially lengthen his shadow, before a few kunai came shooting out of the smoke. Not bothering to use a wind jutsu to deflect them, she merely dodged the knife-like objects before casting a wind jutsu to disperse the smoke. However, as she was about to launch said jutsu, she felt her body unable to move and was forced to drop her fan and walk closer to the smoke. Shikamaru walked out of the smoke. Shadow Possession Jutsu. Success. How did he manage that? Karui asked from her spot next to Omoi and Samui, having accompanied the Raikage and his entourage to the finals. Naruto cut in, hearing the question. When he threw the smoke bombs down, he did it with the primary intention of masking his movements. He probably did the jutsu, connected it to the kunai he threw at Temari, allowing him to gain about half a meter of extra length. To make sure, he also threw a few kunai upwards to cast shadows in front of the sun, in case it was necessary. His shadow jumped from kunai to kunai before threading back through all of them back to him, allowing him to connect to Temari's shadow, Naruto explained, admiring the concentration Shikamaru must have needed to perform such a tactic. All around him, the others were mentally applauding Shikamaru for even coming up with the idea, let alone performing it. Down in the arena, Shikamaru was doing the same thing, amazing the crowd and enraging Temari, who was beginning to get pissed off by his tone of voice. Then he did something that amazed the crowd even more, while at the same time perplexing them. "I quit," he said, causing Temari to blow her top. "What did you say? If this is about me being a girl," Temari shouted, but was interrupted by Shikamaru before she could say anything more. "No, it's more about the fact that I am almost out of chakra, which means I may as well forfeit in the next round, while you still have quite a bit of chakra left," Shikamaru said, infuriating Temari even more. The Chunin and Jounin who were watching in the stands shook their heads in exasperation, as quite a few of their number were censors, and could tell quite easily that the boy was lying, but thankfully for him the judges didn't. "It seems that the Nara laziness is present once more," Anko laughed at Asuma, who was holding his head in exasperation at his students' actions. "You know, I should have known that he would do something like that rather than bother to go through the tournament. Then again, there is still the second round," Asuma commented before going off to meet the lazy genin. "I swear to Kami that I am going to beat the crap out of that lazy slacker," Ino growled, knowing full well of what Shikamaru had just done. Naruto just backed away from her slowly as she exhibited rage, but calmed down once she seemed to regain control, remembering that her match was next. Yamanaka Ino versus Samui. The two blondes regarded each other quietly before the both leaped over the railing, not wanting to bother with walking all the way down. The crowd murmured softly. Many of them had heard mentions of both kunoichi from various shinobi, and both were said to be very skilled for genin. Apparently the young Yamanaka had been personally trained by the legendary Deathly Angel and Panther duo, while Samui was known to be the strongest genin in Kumo by far. "Well, this should be an interesting match," Tenten commented to Chuji and Sakura, unaware that Sasuke was listening in from the row behind, who was wondering what all the fuss was about. "Well, if I remember that Ino girl was nothing more than a fangirl, so logically that Samui girl should win, and rather easily too. How did that fangirl even get to the finals?" Sasuke thought, unknowing of Ino's rapid growth in skill and ability. "Hajime," Genma called before jumping out of the way of the two potential Chunin. At the call, neither girl moved, assessing each other, letting the initial roar of the crowd fade into utter silence, before Ino drew her chikudo from her scabbard slowly, the sound clear to all. In response, Samui drew her tanto, before deciding that if Ino were to go on the offensive with Kenjutsu she wouldn't have much of a chance, and thus leapt forward, speeding through hand signs at a fast rate as she did so. Ino watched as two lightning bunshins sprang up on either side of Samui, breaking off to try and flank her. Ino grinned, before creating a Kage bunshin behind her to guard her back, and charged forward, the sound of her chikudo colliding with Samui's tanto reverberating throughout the arena, causing the crowd to roar. The two fought back and forth, swapping from offensive to defensive, while Ino's Kage bunshin faced off against the two lightning bunshins, slipping between their attacks, but not allowing them to go after its creator. Ino, glancing behind her quickly at the three bunshins, while Samui was struggling to hold her chikudo away from her, maintained her pressure on the Kumo genin with one hand while drawing kunai with explosive seals on them with the other. She flicked them hurriedly while spinning away from Samui, the kunai thudding into the ground at the feet of the two lightning bunshins, who didn't notice, being preoccupied with her Kage bunshin, who did. The Kage bunshin moved back quickly before jumping and back flipping into the air, out of range of the explosives, which went off as she did so. The lightning bunshins were demolished, their lightning chakra dissipating into the ground harmlessly, and the Kage bunshin landed in a crouch, sword to one side, looking at the torn-up ground before standing and turning. Samui cursed as the Kage bunshin shunshined behind her, trying to box her in between Ino and the Kage bunshin, before she copied Ino's tactic and shunshined out of the trap. The two just looked at her, waiting to see her next tactic, but their eyes widened as they felt a massive surge of chakra suddenly rise from Samui, the chakra visibly emanating from all over her body. Through the Jounin senseis and the genin there were many similar thoughts as their brains raced through possible theories as to the chakra containment method that Samui had used. Well, I know that Samui isn't a Jinchuriki as Akatsuki keeps tags on all of them, and I already know the two from Kumo being Yujito and B, so the most likely method for her having that much chakra is she had some form of containment like a chakra storage seal. However, if she had that much chakra in said seal, then she has obviously been using it for some time. Either way, this match just got a lot more difficult for Ino, Naruto thought, keeping his thoughts from showing on his face. Interesting, she seems to have been holding a lot of chakra back in reserve for when it was necessary, but how is she going to use it? Kanako thought, leaning forward in her seat along with a few of the other jounin. Good idea, keeping a majority of one's strength in reserve, but it's so troublesome, Shikamaru thought as he analyzed the fight through lazy eyes. Samui smiled icily before bringing forth around 25 lightning bunshins, causing the eyes of all watching to expand in momentary shock. Ino grinned suddenly, before creating 4 other Kage bunshins. She and the bunshins then proceeded to charge at the larger force, causing many in the crowd to wonder if she was mad. But even as they were charging they were throwing kunai with explosive tags, effectively having the number of lightning bunshins. Ino herself ran straight through the explosions to reach Samui and engage her once more before she could slip away and plan a strategy, while her Kage bunshin split the enemy force amongst themselves, each facing 3 using pure kinjutsu. Samui cursed as Ino came straight for her once more. Does this girl ever stop hunting you? She's damn persistent, she thought internally while maintaining her icy facade. She then began to flash through hand seals. Lightning style, lightning spears. Yellow spears of lightning chakra formed, around 5, before launching at the oncoming Yamanaka. Ino, seeing the flying spears, quickly jumped to one side, allowing the spears to rush by her and fly between the groups of battling bunshin, and continued her rush towards the Kumo-genin. Samui cursed, withdrawing her tanto with her left hand and holding a kunai in backhanded in her right, knowing that even with it, she would be hard-pressed to beat the Yamanaka in kinjutsu. Meanwhile, the Kage bunshin were fighting off the trios of lightning bunshin, ducking, weaving, and flipping around their attacks, before all of a sudden they repeated the tactic Ino had executed with the original Kage bunshin. However, this time the lightning bunshins realized the danger, but it brought the Kage bunshin time to regroup and hid them from the view of their opposing bunshin momentarily, which was all they needed. Seeing that the Kage bunshin had disappeared from their view after the smoke had cleared, the lightning bunshins grouped together, ready to make a stand, as they had formed a circle with them all facing outwards. Suddenly 4 of the bunshin fell over to the ground and dissipated, and the remaining Kage bunshin revealed that they had shunshined to the center of the circle. As shunshin was a form of high-speed travel, it meant that they must have used to Kage bunshin, one from either side, to break through the ring of lightning bunshin, sacrificing themselves but eliminating for more lightning bunshin and piercing the ring. As such, it was now 3 Kage bunshin against 11 lightning bunshin. There was just one problem. They were surrounded. Samui and Ino both knew of the position that their bunshin were in, and Ino drew back suddenly before grinning. You really think I wouldn't have a chakra storage seal, when my teammate is one of the leading Fuinjutsu users in the elemental nations? Ino spoke, before releasing said seal, causing her body to light up with bluish-white chakra, before she continued. The best part is that my chakra storage seal is a lot more advanced, and I can release portions of the chakra held within, rather than all at once. Shit, I played my hand way too early. The likelihood of me winning is falling with each second this continues. I need to finish this as soon as possible. Samui swore thoughtfully as her eyes narrowed in determination. Ino created around 10 more Kage bunshin, who flanked the lightning bunshin focusing on the 3 in the center, cutting them down in short order. The Kage bunshin then focused their attention on Samui, charging her in a mass. Lightning style. Lightning slicer. At Samui's cry, she swung her tanto horizontally, causing an arc of lightning chakra to leap from the end of her blade and rush towards Ino and her Kage bunshin. Ino, having been at the back of the group, managed to shunshin out of the way in time, but the Kage bunshin had all been eliminated, and Samui sighed in slight satisfaction before her world went dark with the impact of the hilt of Ino's chikudo against her temple. Well, that is certainly not what I was expecting. It was a very good display of both strategy and skill from both genin. I will be sure to vote for both of them to be Chunin, Hiruzen said as Genma announced the match. Yes, that Yamanaka seemed to be able to play directly to Samui's weaknesses by dodging or circumventing her attacks and attacking when she wanted. That first move disturbed me slightly, as it seemed to indicate she would be fine sacrificing her teammates in order to win. But obviously it was planned, as said, nodding in agreement, while the Kazekage kept silent. Damn it, we're getting shown up by these other Nins so easily, Karui said as Ino walked over to them carrying Samui. Trust me when I tell you that it was not easy. We both have similar minds when it comes to battle. We are both underhanded but efficient, Ino said, having overheard Karui's comment. Well, wish me luck. Yujito smiled as she heard her name being called along with Shino's. Good luck, Karui and Ino called, both being good friends with the Nibi Jinchuriki, although Ino wished luck to Shino as well, being the only one of his team in the finals. Shino knew it was unlikely he would win, due to Yujito being, as far as he knew, a high-fire nature, but he refused to back down and forfeit. Also, the information he could get from this fight could be invaluable in the future. The two faced each other across the arena, Shino with his bugs swarming around him, creating a buzzing sound, while Yujito just stood there, although her ears twitched occasionally, reminding the spectators oddly of a cat. Naruto looked at Yujito and imagined her with cat ears and a tail, and almost burst out laughing at the idea, not noticing that the eyes of Ino and Gaia, oddly enough, had narrowed dangerously. And although Sai did, and was about to warn Naruto of their anger, he took another glance at the two, smiled knowingly, and sat back. The two fumed silently for a few moments before they realized what they were doing. Stealing his attention. Stupid. Wait a minute. What the hell am I on about? It's obvious that they're going to get together. I mean, she was shooting looks at him ever since we met in the Land of Waves, Ino thought, avoiding the issue of her liking Naruto. Damn it. Just like that. She didn't even doing anything and he is getting closer to her. How can I do something like that? Should I ask her for advice? But that would reveal that I am just a normal girl rather than an emotionless machine. Gaia thought worriedly before mentally asking herself why she is having these thoughts. Shikaku didn't help. Aburame Shino versus Ni Yujito. Hajime. Shino was forced to dodge immediately as Yujito started launching fireballs towards him. The Aburame created a few basic clones. If he had made bug clones, they wouldn't have been much use, as Yujito fire techniques would just set them alight. Yujito was able to dispel the clones easily, and knowing that Shino was behind her, used an area fire jutsu, causing him to back off hurriedly unless his bugs be exterminated. The game of cat and mouse went on for a few minutes, before Shino finally forfeited, knowing that there was no way he could win. His bugs would just be annihilated every time they tried to even approach the Kumoku no Ichi, especially after she activated a jutsu that allowed fire to rise up from the ground around her and hit any attacks approaching her. The winner of the match is Ni Yujito, Genma announced, sympathizing with the Aburame situation. We shall have a 15-minute break before the next round, Hiruzen said from his lectern. 15 minutes later. It is now time for the second half of the first tournament. Will Sabaku no Gaia and Uzumaki Naruto please make their way down to the arena?